It was from the Cataclysm. I can illuminate the technological tree. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 351. Disguiser number 17034. 0. Increase the laser power. Looking at the intact black box in the holographic projection, Yongchang's expression changed drastically, and he shouted in a hurried tone. The order was issued, and the cutting laser power inside Unfathomable instantly increased. The surface of the black box gradually showed signs of melting. As the power of the cutting laser continued to rise, the shell of the black box was successfully cut open. It was completely different from the rough workmanship of the square detector. The equipment inside the black box was extremely delicate, and at first glance, it even looked like a work of art. Yongchang's heart sank. Let alone what the function of these internal devices is. The extremely delicate workmanship alone is enough to trigger the alarm in everyone's hearts. This means that this detector of the first level civilization has been transformed by a higher level civilization. Without time to think about it, he directly reached out and dragged the holographic image beside him and took over the control of a robot. Under Yongchang's control, the robot far away in Unfathomable quickly extended its fingers to the inside of the black box. As the robot extended its finger, the fingertip part quietly opened, revealing the high precision camera inside. Under the inspection of the high precision camera, the circuit as fine as a hair was clearly presented in front of everyone. This is single photon excitation and control device. Looking at the familiar device structure in the holographic projection, Yongchang's heart skipped a beat and he muttered to himself. Now, something really happened. There are many places where single photon excitation and control devices are used. But the device architecture inside the black box is destined to have only one function. Long distance communication device. Human shielding devices can only shield electromagnetic wave communications emitted by detectors and long-distance communication devices that rely on quantum long-distance effects. Humans currently have no way to shield them. At this moment, Yongchang only felt a chill rising from his back. Damn, I met Liu. What kind of civilization can have such a bad taste? Put a first-level civilization detector shell on the long-distance communication device? Is this TMD crazy about gains and losses? At this moment, Yongchang even cursed in his heart. There was a dead silence in the command center of Earth. The original relaxed atmosphere was gone. Every researcher stared at the size data marked in the holographic projection. Yongchang was no exception. He swallowed hard, and his pupils trembled slightly. The other party's technological level is definitely higher than that of humans, at least. The size of human long-distance communication devices is much larger than the black box in front of him. Thinking that all human behaviors are clearly presented under the eyes of that unknown advanced civilization, the chill behind Yongchang became more and more serious. 0. The fleet enters the first level of combat readiness. Yongchang shouted loudly. Start the awakening program immediately. Professor, please define the scope of awakening personnel. All military personnel, all awakened. Yongchang's eyes flashed a fierce look, and he said in a deep voice, next, it may be a tough battle. 1 light year away. A fleet was quietly sailing in the dark and cold space. Unlike the harmony of a human fleet, this fleet is a bit weird. The camera gradually zooms in, and the weirdness becomes stronger. The tattered starship shell shows the rich experience of this fleet. But the surprising point is that almost every starship in this fleet is an independent style. It looks like a pot of hodgepodge. In the flagship located in the center of the fleet, a short humanoid creature shuttles through it. Under the illumination of the dark red light, the environment inside the starship looks particularly gloomy. The humanoid creature has gray skin, and there is no hair on the surface of the extremely smooth skin. Perhaps because of living in a zero-gravity environment for a long time, these little greys have particularly weak limbs. Their heads, compared with their thin bodies, look particularly large. This extremely inharmonious picture adds a bit of weirdness to the already gloomy atmosphere. But these little greys seem to be accustomed to such a living environment. They talk to each other and work. It looks like a busy and fulfilling scene. Suddenly a piercing alarm sounded inside the flagship. The sudden alarm not only did not cause the little grey men to be frightened and panic, but made them excited. Under the guidance of the broadcast, these little grey men quickly walked towards the command center along the passage inside the starship. The weak and uncoordinated limbs swung quickly, adding a bit of weird humor to the picture. The picture changed. Inside the command center of the little grey men flagship. A movie was playing on the huge display. In the movie, several silver white robots with thick limbs were controlling the laser beam to cut the object under the lens. The object was cut. The robot's movement also stopped. After pausing for a few seconds, perhaps discovering the existence of the lens, the robot quickly raised its hand and adjusted the position of the laser beam. A dazzling light came from right in front of the lens. The movie ended. A strange and obscure voice came from the speakers around everyone. Just now, the Pretender number 17034 we sent successfully encountered a technological civilization and was successfully captured by the other side. According to the data sent back by the Pretender, the other side's fleet sails at a speed of 25% of the speed of light, and the propulsion method is Hall propulsion. You have also seen the picture just now. The other side has mastered high power laser weapons. After multiple evaluations, the other side's strength should be between the second and third level civilizations. What this means, I believe, you should know better than anyone else. As soon as the voice fell, a cheer rang out in the command center. The strange and obscure tone gradually merged into a simple word: plunder, plunder, plunder. Seemingly very satisfied with the reaction of the little greys, the tone of the voice in the loudspeaker gradually became high-pitched. Adjust course, full speed ahead, turn on the shield defense system, prepare to attack. The huge and chaotic fleet slowly turned. Facing the direction of the human fleet. All the starships in the fleet began to accelerate. Because of the uneven quality of the starships, the originally neat fleet quickly became scattered. The starships with strong acceleration performance rushed straight to the human fleet 1 light year away. The small starships with poor performance gathered into a secondary fleet and headed towards the destination. Surprisingly, the flagship with the largest size and the most glamorous appearance was left behind by the starships. Chapter 352 Current speed 1.1 times the speed of light. When all the starships were far away, something strange happened. A dazzling light flashed at the head and tail of the flagship at the same time. Even the giant Hall thruster at the tail was eclipsed by these two lights. At the same time, a broadcast with a strange tone sounded inside the flagship. The gravitational field generator is ready. The space curvature bubble is forming. Prepare to enter curvature navigation. The next moment, the behemoth disappeared from sight. Successfully entered curvature navigation. Current speed 1.1 times the speed of light. Human fleet. LV Yongchang stood on the command platform with a solemn expression, looking at the holographic image in front of him. Although he had no idea what happened 1 light year away. But combined with the camouflage detector in front of him, the long distance communication device and the other party's delay in responding to his communication request, he already got the answer in his heart. War is coming. Compared with the previous Proxima war, this time, human civilization is becoming more passive. The knowledge of the enemy is limited to the detector in front of him. Even the location of the enemy is not clear. LV Yongchang frowned and looked at the long distance communication device that was still working normally in the holographic projection. The high energy laser just now directly destroyed the camera on the detector, but under his order, the high energy laser beam deliberately avoided the long distance communication device in the black box. The reason is also very simple. The technology contained in this miniature long distance communication device is far beyond that of humans, and humans just need such technology. The huge size of the long distance communication device greatly limits the performance of human civilization detectors. If this technology is mastered, the soft power of the human fleet will rise to another level. But this is undoubtedly a matter of taking chestnuts from the fire and licking blood on the tip of the knife. It is precisely because of this that LV Yongchang is in a dilemma at this moment. In the end, what should be done? Should this detector and long distance communication device be destroyed immediately and flee, or Face the war. Zhao Ziji on the side saw LV Yongchang's entanglement point. He stepped forward and said in a deep voice, "Professor, this communication device cannot be destroyed." LV Yongchang's expression changed slightly, and he turned his head to look at Zhao Ziji beside him. "Why do you say that?" Zhao Ziji straightened his expression and quickly explained, "Professor, if I'm not mistaken, you should want to use it to master a more advanced long-distance communication device, right?" LV Yongchang nodded gently. Zhao Ziji's expression became more serious. "This is the only enemy civilization communication device we have, combined with the current situation. The importance of this communication device is extraordinary. If the other party has no intention of war, it can serve as a communication medium between the two civilizations. On the contrary, if the other party shows a tendency to war." Speaking of this, Zhao Ziji glanced at the holographic projection and subconsciously lowered his voice. "We can use it to make some small arrangements." LV Yongchang suddenly realized. He pondered for a moment, nodded and said, "You are responsible for the war. What do you think we should do now?" Zhao Ziji's eyes flashed. "At present, we know nothing about the enemy. The only thing we know is that the enemy's technological level is higher than ours. Therefore, I suggest." LV Yongchang nodded thoughtfully. "This method is good. However, there is still room for improvement." As he said, he turned his head and looked at the holographic projection in front of him. Zhao Ziji was stunned and looked in the direction of LV Yongchang's gaze. In the holographic projection, there was a detector with a flashing red working indicator light. A few hours later in Zuan number 2. Under Zero's control, several robots moved forward again and surrounded the black box. The red working indicator light flashed slowly, as if foreshadowing what would happen next. A robot carefully disassembled the long-distance communication device with the help of tools made by a 3D printing device and connected several newly made cables to several interfaces. The next moment, the holographic projection unfolded and lines of fine and dense codes flashed in it. "Professor, the crack was successful." Zero's voice sounded in the command center. "I have successfully hacked into the control system of the communication device." Hearing this, a trace of joy flashed across LV Yongchang's face. "But did the other party find anything unusual?" Zero quickly replied, "No abnormal instructions have been received so far, and the possibility of being discovered can be basically ruled out." LV Yongchang's eyes were full of excitement. Finally, this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity has been caught. At the beginning, there was no such opportunity when fighting the Proxima civilization. He took a deep breath and suppressed the excitement in his heart. Zero used the long-distance communication device to try to hack into the other party's central computer. A few seconds later, a line of Chinese characters flashed in the holographic projection. "Invasion failed." Zero's voice also sounded, "Professor, it cannot be hacked. This set of long-distance communication devices is in a physically isolated state, and it is not connected to the central computer." LV Yongchang's expression changed slightly. As it's so thoughtful, it seems that the other party came prepared. This way, the possibility of war has increased a lot. Forget it. It's not a big deal. Learning that he couldn't hack into the other party's central computer system, the excitement in LV Yongchang's eyes suddenly dissipated. He waved his hand and continued to ask, "You can control this long-distance communication device now, right?" "Yes, Professor." Zero responded, "At present, I have obtained all control permissions." "Very good." LV Yongchang's eyes lit up slightly. "Begin to implement the second phase of the plan." The gate of the Earth port slowly opened. A dozen modified Zuan second ships came out of it one after another. After pausing for a moment in space, the whole thrusters at the tail of these dozen Zuan second ships shone brightly, pushing them to rush in a dozen different directions. And Zuan second, which was equipped with a long-distance communication device, still moved in the original direction of travel. As for the human fleet, it slowly changed its sailing direction and sailed in a completely different direction. Zero, prepare to modify the position parameters. LV Yongchang's smile widened, and he ordered softly, "Change to the position of number 1 Zuan. Turn on the number 1 Zuan full band active detection equipment." After A short wait. Zero's voice sounded again. Modification successful. Start the third phase plan. Speaking of this, Yongchang's expression became more serious. Make full preparations for war. Engineering. Ships give priority to manufacturing weapons, ammunition, and repair non-orbits. All pilots and captains, after completing the gravity cabin training, immediately return to their respective starships and be ready for battle at any time. Chapter 353 Interstellar Alliance, or Inside the Grey Man flagship point. A crisp reminder sounded in the dark red cabin. Oh, change the driving direction. Little Grey Man looked at the monitor in front of him and sneered. Is this the same old trick again? It raised its weak arm and swiped a few times on the screen. The first group of detectors were divided into two groups. The first group maintained the original direction of travel. The second group headed towards the direction where the signal came from. Yongchang sat in the command center, looking at the unchanged holographic image, and frowned slightly. It has been a year since the detector was captured. During this year, everything was calm. Not only was there no unknown advanced civilization coming, even the detector captured in Zuanv 2 did not send any abnormal signals. To be honest, if it weren't for the over-distant communication device in the zero certainty detector that was still in working condition, Yongchang even suspected that he had been fighting against the air this year. Looking at the Gliese 555 star system in the star map that was getting further and further away from the fleet, he sighed deeply. I don't know where the other party is now. A trace of worry flashed in Yongchang's eyes at first. Yongchang wanted to detect the location of the opponent's civilization through the captured detector. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. The other party's level of caution far exceeded his imagination. Even if the invasion had all the permissions for the probe, Zero was still unable to obtain any intel on the enemy fleet. This year, mankind has been fully prepared for battle. But, until now, Yongchang couldn't be sure where the first attack would come from. He couldn't even be sure when the attack would come. This faint sense of panic that lingers in my heart is undoubtedly the most tormenting. It will continuously wear down the soldier's mentality and fighting will. In addition, there is a more important issue. Energy. The entire fleet consumes an extremely large amount of energy every time it accelerates, decelerates, and turns. Although the human fleet's interstar system navigation technology is relatively mature, its energy reserves are relatively abundant. But procrastinating like this is not an option. Yongchang glanced at Zhao Ziji, who had a gloomy face on the side, and shook his head lightly. Ziji, you have to adapt to this situation. The time span of interstellar war must be far beyond your imagination. As the strategic commander of the fleet, you cannot show such impatience. Hearing this, Zhao Ziji's expression changed slightly. Thinking of the possible negative consequences, Zhao Ziji couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He quickly adjusted his sitting posture and adjusted the gloomy look on his face. Then, he said solemnly, Professor, I understand. Yongchang glanced at Zhao Ziji's sitting posture and expression, and nodded with satisfaction. Before he could speak, a piercing alarm sounded. Yongchang's expression moved slightly, and he quickly turned to look at the holographic projection. When he saw the holographic image with red light flashing around it, instead of panic, his face was filled with relief. It's finally here. Attention, everyone. Yongchang reached out to open the microphone in front of him and shouted in a deep voice, get ready for the first contact. Grey Man fleet. Having experienced countless large and small interstellar wars, the little Greys have an extremely deep understanding of the role of flagships. A gentleman should never stand behind a dangerous wall. This saying also applies to flagships, but correspondingly, every time the flagship goes into battle, it means that the battle situation has entered a critical node. Either about to win or face defeat. Under the control of the little Greys, the huge flagship had already broken away from the curvature navigation state. At this moment, they are less than 0.01 light years away from the signal source. What they need to do is wait quietly for the reports from the two sets of detectors. Once the location of the opposing civilization's starship is confirmed, the Grey fleet will swarm in. As for the role of the flagship, in the eyes of these little Grey men, it is just an insurance to protect themselves against unexpected situations. After all, how can a mere second-level civilization resist their fleet? Thinking of this, the little grey man headed by the command center showed an extremely twisted smile on his face. Earth Command Center in the holographic projection with red light flashing. There is Zuanv number 1. Zuanv number 1 does not contain any detectors captured by humans. On the contrary, it is only loaded with complete full band detection equipment and a huge number of plasma bombs under Zero's operation. The detector that continuously sent signals successfully transmitted false information to the other civilization. Logically speaking, if the plan is successful, you should be happy. But looking at the data returned by the full band detection equipment, Yongchang's expression was particularly solemn. His brows were furrowed, and there wasn't even a trace of a smile on his face. The maximum sailing speed is 35% of the speed of light, he murmured to himself. It's troublesome. Such a high sailing speed not only means that human civilization cannot escape in front of it, but also means that the technology of the other civilization is far more advanced than humans, and the pictures in the holographic projection confirm the former. In the camera of Zuanv number 1, hundreds of detectors with a size of only a few meters easily caught up with it. LV Yongchang moved his fingers slightly and wrote down several key information. Hall propulsion device, 35% of the speed of light. As the detector kept approaching, he suddenly froze. How could this happen? LV Yongchang's eyes were full of doubts, and he muttered to himself. Not only LV Yongchang, but everyone in the command center also exclaimed a few times. The reason is simple. These high-speed detectors have different styles: spherical, square, and even butterfly-shaped. It can be called the scene of the Interstellar Spacecraft Appearance Design Award. However, these detectors of different shapes have a common feature: all the detectors look shabby on the surface. He even found that there was a huge black pit on the surface of a butterfly-shaped detector. It was like being bombarded by kinetic weapons. They just finished a war. LV Yongchang swallowed his saliva and murmured in a low voice, "There is a certain possibility." Fang Zhu took over Lu Yongchang's words. "Perhaps the other party belongs to an interstellar alliance organization." Lu Yongchang silently watched the detector getting closer and closer to Zuanv number 1, and the doubts in his eyes were so thick that they seemed to overflow. Interstellar alliance, although Hua once said that the dark forest is not the only law of civilization in the universe. But even if he saw this hodgepodge of pictures with his own eyes, he still couldn't believe it. There were no less than 20 styles just from what he saw. When did the alliance between multiple civilizations become so simple? Chapter 354, Self-Destructing Bait. LV Yongchang took a long breath, suppressed his doubts, and gave an order. 0. Let Zuanv number 1 self-destruct. At the same time, transfer the position signal to Zuanv number 2. Received. After hearing Zero's response, LV Yongchang slowly closed his eyes. Before he closed his eyes, a dazzling white light flashed in the holographic projection. Zuanv number 1, in the extremely high-yield plasma bomb, turned into ashes. Several detectors that had just approached were affected by the aftermath of the explosion, and their armor was instantly penetrated by the high-temperature plasma flow inside the flagship of the little grey man. A shrill alarm sounded. The little grey man at the top glanced at the screen in front of him indifferently. "It's really a bait. Forget it. It's just a few worthless detectors, so let's destroy them." As he said, the little grey man cast his eyes on the holographic projection on the side. Over there, there was another set of images sent back by the probes that were moving along the original route. In the picture, the square Zuanv second was quietly traveling in the void of the universe. But strangely, there was no starship next to this Zuanv I. The little grey man looked a little ugly, but his expression was still calm. "It's still a smart civilization. Prepare to release all the probes. They can't run away." Before he finished speaking, another alarm sounded. Hearing this familiar alarm, the little grey man was stunned. It turned its head sharply and looked at the screen on the side. When it saw the new signal source, it finally couldn't hold it anymore. "What's going on? Why is there another signal? Technician, come here. Pull the technician over to me." The sharp voice of the little gray man's command sounded in the flagship. A few minutes later a little gray man with increasingly weak limbs came to the commander with humorous steps. "Technician, tell me, why are there two signal sources?" The little gray commander asked the technician in front of him in an angry tone. "How did you do the maintenance work?" It subconsciously thought that the long-distance communication device in the detector had a problem. The reason is also very simple. After so many interstellar wars, the detector was captured from time to time. But whether it was facing a third-level civilization or a broken fourth-level civilization, it had never encountered such a situation. It's too weird. A detector actually sent out signals from two different locations. One after another, the technician responded tremblingly. "Commander, I need a little time. Hurry up." The little gray commander's tone became more and more impatient. "Give you 10 minutes. If you can't find the reason, you'll be ready to become a space junk." The technician trembled violently and responded repeatedly, I'll try my best. I'll try my best." After that, it turned and ran out of the command hall. At this moment, it already had a terrifying guess in its heart. But this guess requires it to go to the isolation room for confirmation. The little gray flagship physical isolation room. It frantically found the mother long-distance communication device of the captured detector according to the number. Then, it squatted down, knelt in front of the control device, and reached out to open the protective shell of the control device. The technician's hands trembled slightly and connected the maintenance terminal placed aside to the control device. Like the long-distance communication equipment, the maintenance terminal is also in a physical isolation state, eliminating all possibilities of external intrusion. It quickly tapped its weak fingers, trying to find the cause of the signal source disorder, but after trying everything, it showed deep doubts in its eyes. Everything is normal. A drop of cold sweat slowly slid down its forehead. At this time, everything is normal is the biggest abnormality. Thinking of a conjecture that just emerged in his mind, a layer of fine and dense cold sweat suddenly appeared on the forehead of the little gray technician. Just when it was at a loss, the commanding shout came from the loudspeaker outside the isolation room. "Technician, technician, come here." Inside, the command center shortly after the technician left, another alarm sounded. The little gray commander glanced at the screen and his face became a little ugly. Another self-destructing bait. This explosion destroyed 5 detectors. Although the detectors are not worth much, such behavior is tantamount to dancing on its nerve endings. "This damn bug." It clenched its thin fists and said viciously. The technician took another humorous step and came to the command center. The large amount of exercise, coupled with the extremely frightened mood, made its gray skin pale. "Technician." The commander's sharp voice sounded again. "Have you found the reason?" Faced with the questioning, the technician's facial skin looked particularly pale. It hurriedly shook its head. "Not yet." Seeing the cold light in the commander's eyes gradually become stronger, the technician hurriedly shouted again. "But I have a guess. Tell me." The technician hesitated for a moment and slowly said, I suspect that our long-distance communication device has been invaded by the enemy." There was silence in the command center. The technician subconsciously looked up. When he saw the commander's eyes that looked like he was looking at an inorganic object, he shuddered. "Invasion? Are you kidding me? I asked you, have you found evidence?" The technician was silent. The commander got the answer from the technician's reaction. A hideous sneer appeared on his face. "Is this the answer you gave me, without any evidence?" "Just your mouth. Let's not talk about evidence first. Do you think that a mere level 2 civilization can do this? Don't forget, the level 4 civilization didn't succeed in cracking our long-distance communication device." In the face of doubts and ridicule, the technician remained silent. You can prepare to become a space junk." The commander decided its life or death expressionlessly. Facing the crisis of life and death, the technician trembled like a sieve. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration came to its mind. "Commander, please send some probes to the source of the signal to investigate. There must be a similar starship over there. This is the evidence that the long-distance communication device has been invaded." The little gray man sitting in the first seat stared straight at the pale technician in front of him and nodded slowly. "Okay, send the nearest group of probes to the source of the signal to see what is going on. If Not, you should know what will happen to you. Chapter 355 Defensive Formation. Hearing what the conductor said, the technician's body trembled again. He raised his head, looked at the screen in front of him with panic eyes, and silently prayed in his heart for the results of the next investigation. At the top of the screen, a countdown to the arrival of the detector is displayed. 10 days. This meant that he had to spend 10 long days in the shadow of death. You go first, perhaps because he failed to find the location of human civilization, or because of an unexpected situation with the long-distance communication device. A look of impatience flashed across the commander's face. In these 10 days, I hope you can find sufficient evidence. Hearing this, a hint of surprise flashed in the technician's eyes. It nodded repeatedly, stood up and ran quickly towards the door. The ultra-distant communication device is in an isolated room. The technician's face was full of confusion and confusion. A full 10 days passed. From its perspective, there is still nothing unusual about this long-distance communication device. Not only that, it also found a lot of colleagues of its own. But no one can detect the problem. The technician sat on the cold ground, feeling the weak gravity from the simulated gravity device. With deep despair in his eyes, he turned his head and glanced at the time. The time is almost up. It still found no so-called evidence. If there are no enemy ships near the signal source, it stood up with a bitter look on its face, disconnected the maintenance terminal, and staggered towards the isolation room door. According to the order issued by the commander, it now needs to go to the command center to face the final trial. The moment it walked out of the isolation room door, a piercing alarm sounded in the flagship. This extremely sharp sound did not panic it. On the contrary, after being stunned for a few seconds, it showed a relieved and relaxed smile. Finally, the bet was right. When the technician walked slowly to the command center, it was already a mess. It glanced casually at the screen directly in front of it. As expected. In addition to the explosion of fire, a brand new signal source appeared in front of everyone. Technician, the originally calm commander, was now in a state of panic. It shouted, "What the hell is going on? Why was a long-distance communication device invaded by a second-level civilization?" At this moment, the stubborn and arrogant commander finally admitted this incredible conclusion. As for the reason, the sirens just now are the best evidence. The same starship, the same self-destruction. Although the self-destruction did not cause any damage to the detector, it was like a slap in the face. While feeling embarrassed and ashamed, uncontrollable rage arose in its heart. Its anger towards human civilization has reached its peak. "Damn bugs, command." The great technician looked as usual and saluted respectfully to the fleet commander. "Technician, have you found the reason?" the conductor gasped and asked in a deep voice. Hearing this question, the great technician's expression changed slightly, but he still said calmly, "At the moment, not yet." "You before." The fleet commander's scolding could be heard. It spoke again. "To be precise, we haven't found the reason yet. You." The conductor's expression changed slightly, suppressing the anger in his heart. Although the status of these technicians in civilization is not high, it is not enough to do such stupid things that offend the entire technician group. "Yes." The technician lowered his stance. "Dear fleet commander, in the past 10 days, no technician has discovered any problems. This only shows that in the field of computer software, the other party far surpasses us. This is normal. After all, you also know that we do not belong to a normally developing civilization." The conductor didn't speak, just sat quietly in his seat. It was filled with shock. How is this possible? A level 2 civilization actually surpasses a quasi level 4 civilization in the field of computer software? It gritted its teeth fiercely, and a cold light shone in its eyes. Crack. It raised its hand and slapped the console in front of it hard. "If that's the case, then I can't let them go. Release all detectors. Prepare to enter the warp navigation state again. Even if I turn this 1 light-year area upside down, I still want to find this small second-level civilization. Human fleet. Professor, Zuanv number 2 has been discovered." Zero's voice sounded in the command center. Yongchang slowly opened his eyes and murmured in a low voice, 10 days. After pondering for a moment, he untied the electromagnetic absorption device on the chair, stood up and said, "Zero, tell everyone, From now on, always be prepared to deal with enemy attacks. All fleets maintain radio silence. At the same time, activate the defensive formation. Hearing this, Zhaozhi's face flashed with surprise. From now on, don't. We still have 15 baits. Not bad. Lu Yongchang nodded vigorously and repeated again. From now on, otherwise, it might be too late. Sensing the confusion in Zhaozhi's eyes, he smiled and explained. Have you not noticed that the fleet has been sailing in a straight line since the last change of course? Zhi nodded. I have noticed this, Professor. You probably want to save some energy, right? Lu Yongchang nodded and shook his head. That's half the answer, right? The fleet turns and consumes a lot of energy. This is part of the reason. The most important reason is that we currently do not have the other party's location information. When the other party has a higher sailing speed, turning blindly is likely to collide with the surrounding network of the other party's detectors. Speaking of this, Lu Yongchang sighed and sat on his chair again. The bait is our tool to lead the other party to other areas, but the problem lies precisely here. Although these Zhuan-2s have turned several times, they are heading away from us no matter what. More than 10 samples are enough for them to calculate and deduce the possible direction of the human fleet. Therefore war has become a high probability event. It just depends on when the other party reacts. While the two were talking, the human fleet was quietly changing its formation point one after another. Home ship is approaching Earth under Zero's control. The distance between each home ship quickly narrowed until it remained on a cordon point. The distance between the Golden Crow battleships expanded rapidly. Point they take Earth and home ship as the center of the sphere and slowly spread outward. Point during the formation change, the fleet was in radio silence. Point all information is transmitted by long distance communication devices. Chapter 356, Battle of Wisdom and Courage. Dazzling lights once again lit up at both ends of the flagship. The gravitational field generator is ready. The space curvature bubble is forming. A waveless electronic synthesized sound sounded inside the flagship. ETC. In the command center, technicians shouted, countdown to warp navigation. 60.59. The electronic synthesized sound is still counting down in an orderly manner. Technician. The gray man commander looked at the technician in front of him dissatisfied. What do you want to do? The technician raised his head and looked at the fleet commander for 2 seconds. Commander, I have a proposal. This would significantly reduce our search effort. The conductor was silent, staring intently at the technician in front of him. 10.9. The cold electronic synthesized sound still echoed in the cabin. Stop warp sailing. The conductor reached out and pressed a button and said in a deep voice, warp navigation confirmed to have ceased. The gravitational field is stable. The technician subconsciously glanced at the side window point outside the porthole. The originally distorted starlight gradually returned to normal as the electronic synthesizer sounded. Point the dazzling light at the front and rear of the flagship also gradually dimmed. Point just before entering the curvature voyage, the gray flagship broke away from the space curvature bubble. Technician. When the conductor saw the technician's actions, he became increasingly dissatisfied, and his tone became a little more irritable. What are you looking at? Upon hearing the commander's scolding, the technician quickly retracted his gaze toward the porthole and responded respectfully. Commander, I suggest that we take advantage of the situation. What do you mean? The skin on the conductor's face wrinkled. The other party hacked into our long-distance communication device and used it to send us false and incorrect location information. A glint flashed in the technician's eyes, and this is where our opportunity lies. Since the other party's civilization is only a second-level civilization, they must want to escape as soon as possible, and those baits must be moving in a direction away from the other party's civilization. As long as we get enough samples, we can rule out most of the wrong options. As for the possibility of the fleet turning midway, Commander, I believe that for a second-level civilization, the energy is not abundant enough to change the course at will. The wrinkles on the fleet commander's face gradually disappeared. Instead, there was a strong sense of excitement. But just Do as you say. If you successfully find the other side's civilization, you will have a share of the credit for this battle. 2 months later, human fleet. Professor, this is the last bait ship. Lu Yongchang shook his head helplessly. The opponent is getting faster and faster. Forget it. Now that you've been discovered, let's blow ourselves up. Receive. The Gray's flagship point as a white light flashed. The bait ship on the screen exploded violently. The conductor looked at the scene in front of him expressionlessly. This is already the 15th time it has seen the same scene. After the explosion, it subconsciously turned to look at the screen aside and began to wait for the alarm that was about to sound. 1 second. 2 seconds. Nothing happens. The siren didn't sound. The new signal source did not appear either. After the little gray commander was stunned for 2 seconds, excitement suddenly appeared in his eyes. There is none left. Finally, no more bait. Damn bugs. If you have the ability, put out more than 10 or 20 baits. He stood up from his chair excitedly. Technician. Now we can start the calculation and derivation. The technician pondered for a moment and nodded slowly. Currently, we have obtained a total of 18 sample data. Although it is a little less, it should be able to carry out simple simulation calculations. As he spoke, he entered the location information of 18 bait ships into his personal terminal. On the big screen directly in front, a profound star map appeared. In the star map, bright white dots appear one after another. Then, a dotted line extends from each white dot. This is the direction the decoy ship was traveling when it was spotted. 18 white dotted lines intersect in the star chart. The calculation data flashed rapidly. Soon, several areas were highlighted on the star map. Command. The technician's mouth raised slightly, and he said with some pride, because the number of samples is small, I can only determine these directions at the moment. Next, please send detectors to search these areas carefully. If nothing else happens, this little bug must be hiding in a corner of these areas. The human fleet in defensive formation sailed quietly in the endless dark universe. In order to pursue concealment, the human fleet did not activate any active detection equipment. Even after reaching the maximum speed of 25%, Lu Yongchang directly ordered the starship engines to be shut down, allowing the entire fleet to slide in the universe relying on inertia. Although this will cause a slight attenuation of the starship's speed, it greatly increases the safety of the fleet. Inside the Earth Command Center, every scientific researcher sat in his seat with a serious expression. Their attention was all focused on the holographic projection in front of them. In the projection, apart from some images observed by optical telescopes, most of them were various signals from passive detection equipment. If a high-level civilization attacks, these signals will be the first warning of human civilization. Click. In the quiet command center, the sound of the electromagnetic absorption device unlocking was particularly noticeable. LV Yongchang raised his head and looked in the direction of the sound. Fang Zhu rubbed his eyes and stood up from his seat yawning. Seeing LV Yongchang's puzzled eyes, he pointed outside the door and made a lip shape. Toilet. After understanding Fang Zhu's lip language, LV Yongchang laughed dumbly, waved his hand casually, and then cast his eyes on the holographic projection in front of him again. Seeing LV Yongchang's action, Fang Zhu shrugged and walked lightly towards the door of the command center. Suddenly, the curve in the holographic projection, that was originally as stable as an old dog, fluctuated wildly. A shrill alarm sounded. Fang Zhu was stunned for a moment, and his expression was slightly distorted. Then, he turned around and ran back to his seat. But at this moment, no one noticed his macro expression. Everyone's attention was on the holographic projection in front of them. It's the detector sent by the other party. Lu Yongchang quickly swiped the holographic projection in front of him and called up several key data. Chapter 357 Type Second Laser Weapon. In the holographic projection, the signal detected by the passive detection equipment is extremely obvious. LV Yongchang is almost certain that these detectors are running over with full band active detection radars. How dare they do this? Beside him, Fang Zhu muttered to himself in disbelief. Isn't this telling us that they are coming? LV Yongchang's expression dimmed a little. Perhaps the technological level of the other civilization is higher than I thought. At least, they are extremely confident in this roundup. He took a deep breath calmed down his complex emotions, and said in a deep voice, "But, let's put it another way, this is our opportunity." 0. Have you determined the location of the other detector? LV Yongchang asked, changing the subject. Successfully located. 0 answered while projecting the positioning data onto the holographic projection in front of him. Currently, an optical telescope is being used for searching. In the holographic projection, a star map unfolded. Dozens of bright white dots appeared in a corner of the star map point, looking at the direction in which these dots were moving. LV Yongchang was stunned. Has the other party not discovered us yet? Before 0 could answer, he asked himself. Yes, it is indeed difficult to find a fleet with all its engines turned off in such an empty and dark universe. However, since the other party has found this area, it is only a matter of time before they find it or not. Professor Zhaozhi's voice came from the side point. LV Yongchang naturally knew what he wanted to say, and shook his head slowly and said, "Don't do it yet. Wait until the other party gets closer. If possible, try to capture some probe wreckage. I need to use this to obtain some intelligence about the other party's fleet." Zhaozhi's expression was stern, and he nodded gently. In the holographic projection, dozens of bright white light spots instantly dispersed. They conducted a carpet search around this area. One of the bright white light spots flew straight towards the human fleet. "Professor, we have successfully acquired the optical image of the enemy's detector." As the distance got closer, the high-precision optical telescope installed in the fleet also successfully photographed the enemy civilization's detector. When seeing the image presented in the holographic projection, LV Yongchang was stunned again. Another new type of detector compared to the detector photographed by the Zhuan decoy ship. This detector has an ellipsoidal shape. Although the shape is different, its surface is still full of a strong style of war damage. Deep craters, laser burn marks, and exposed circuit boards. It's like it just came down from the front line. LV Yongchang shook his head and said helplessly, "I really don't know what kind of civilization we are fighting against. It has developed to this point. Can't they even gather the resources to repair the detector? Or is this their aesthetic?" He winked at Zhaozhi. "You can prepare for action." Under Zhaozhi's command, the tail of a golden crow battleship suddenly lit up with the faint blue light of the hull thruster. It slowly broke away from the formation and silently drove in the direction of the ellipsoidal detector on the holographic projection in the command center. The ellipsoidal detector sent a large amount of electromagnetic waves to the surroundings, driving recklessly and ostentatiously in interstellar space. Suddenly, it seemed to have discovered something. The speed suddenly dropped. "Discovered. Attack." Zhaozhi's urgent voice sounded in the command center at the same time. A beam of light with a faint blue glow shot out from the main laser emitter on the head of the Golden Crow battleship, shooting straight towards the ellipsoidal detector. 1 second later, the dark blue laser accurately irradiated a sunken area of the armor of the ellipsoid detector under the observation of the optical telescope. The power of the Type II laser weapon was clearly presented to everyone. Almost at the same time, the ellipsoid detector automatically made an evasive action. For most continuous laser weapons, emergency evasive actions can effectively avoid most of their damage. The principle is also very simple. As long as the laser beam is not irradiated on the same piece of armor, the power of the laser weapon will be greatly reduced. But obviously, this low-level evasion plan will not work on 0. Under Zero's control, the dark blue laser beam bites the detector tightly, burning the sunken area of the armor continuously. While the detector made an evasive action, the intensity of the electromagnetic wave signal it emitted also increased several times instantly. Obviously, this detector is calling its companions and sending the attack to the main civilization. But this does not affect the outcome of this detector. Perhaps it is because the armor strength of the irradiated area is far below the normal level. In just a moment, a big hole was burned on the surface of the tattered ellipsoid detector. Unlike the Type I laser weapon, the duration of the Type II laser weapon has increased a lot. Therefore, after burning through the armor of the ellipsoid detector, the blue light beam rushed straight into its interior. Under the high temperature brought by the laser, the light of the hull thruster at the tail of the ellipsoid flickered a few times and then slowly went out. But as the laser weapon blasted into the inside of the detector, Various complex equipment inside melted and suddenly produced a thick black smoke. Black smoke spurted out from the breached hole. This greatly reduces the lethality of laser weapons at this time. The working time of the Type II laser weapon has also reached its limit. It needs some time to cool down and recharge before it can launch its next attack. The faint blue beam that spanned 1 light second slowly dissipated, leaving only the ellipsoid detector with billowing smoke and sliding forward by relying on inertia. After gliding for a while, perhaps because its energy device was damaged, a violent burst of fire suddenly spewed out from its interior. Explode. For a moment, the firelight illuminated a small area of dark universe around it, but soon, the firelight was swallowed up by the thicker darkness. Earth Command Center. Yongchang shook his head with regret. What a pity, Zhao. Ziji was stunned for a moment, then subconsciously comforted him. Professor, there are other detectors, and we still have a chance. He still remembered that Professor Lu wanted to capture a detector of the enemy civilization and use it to make a simple assessment of the enemy civilization's strength point. But Lu Yongchang sighed again. When he heard Zhao Ziji's comforting words, he shook his head and said, the thick smoke caused by the internal combustion of the detector greatly reduces the lethality of laser weapons. The next generation of laser weapons may have to consider solving this problem. Zhao Ziji, Professor, it has been detected that the remaining 17 detectors are changing course. Zeros. Voice relieved Zhao Ziji's embarrassment in time. Cough. Zhao Ziji coughed lightly, picked up the microphone on the side, and issued several orders to the fleet in an orderly manner. This time, it is bound to successfully capture a high-end version of the detector, rather than the original fake and shoddy product wrapped in a garbage shell. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 358. Is it possible that the problem lies with Zero, the Grey's flagship point? When the faint blue laser pierced the defense of the ellipsoid detector, an alarm sounded inside the flagship. Alarm. Detector number 371163 is under unknown attack. The attack type is high energy laser beam. The sirens did not cause any panic. Instead, every Grey in the command center became abnormal. Excited. Found it. The gloomy look on the Grey technician's face suddenly brightened. It pointed to the big screen in front and shouted in a slightly sharp voice, Command. Command. We have discovered the opponent's fleet. The signal is lost. Electronic audio coverage without any fluctuations. The conductor sitting at the head took a deep breath and stood up from his seat. How many detectors are there in this area? The technician quickly stretched out his fingers and tapped a few times on the personal terminal in front of him. Report. There are currently 17 detectors left. The skin on the conductor's face wrinkled slightly. He shook his head slowly and said, too little. Let these 17 detectors go over to confirm the situation first. First of all, we have to confirm that this is the opponent's fleet and not a small decoy ship. Secondly, mobilize all detectors in the nearby area. Carry out a thorough investigation for me. I'm going to make sure this little bug has nowhere to hide. Human fleet. Seeing the 17 bright spots in the star map rushing towards the fleet, the atmosphere in the command center suddenly became solemn. Everyone knows what happens next. War is about to break out. Fleet periphery. The tail of another Golden Crow battleship lit up with the light of the hull thruster and left the original formation point, although the ellipsoid detector just now seemed vulnerable to Type II laser weapons. But for the sake of safety, Zhao Ziji still ordered an additional Golden Crow battleship to be dispatched for escort. After all, no one knows what cards higher level civilizations have in their hands. For example, no one knows that a mere second level civilization actually possesses the means of attack of a 7th level civilization. Just as Zhao Ziji was thinking wildly, the second detector quietly approached. This time, the Golden Crow battleship did not use Type II laser weapons. Instead, a Type II coil gun was used. Compared with the Type II coil gun, It is larger and has a faster muzzle speed point. The micronuclear bombs loaded inside the projectiles were also replaced with small plasma bombs. There is no doubt that the lethality of Type II coil gun is much higher than that of Type I coil gun. As the second detector got closer and closer, the captain of the Golden Crow battleship issued an order. Fire. Flashes of fire flashed across the muzzles of the battleship's secondary guns. As if it found itself locked, the probe quickly changed its course and launched evasive maneuvers. However, it is obvious that this method does not work well for humans. Aim assist is on. Zero's voice sounded inside the Golden Crow battleship point. At the same time, dozens of white dotted lines appeared in the holographic projection inside the battleship point. The secondary gun barrel also began to swing slightly at this time point. Every time the angle is adjusted, dozens to hundreds of shells are shot out of the barrel. Tens of seconds later, a flash of plasma bomb explosion appeared in the dark depths of space point. This means that a shell successfully hit the small detector. Where there is one, there are two. The second way, the third way, the detector was instantly submerged in a series of explosions of fire. The fire gradually dissipated. The dilapidated detector had turned into a piece of space junk, floating quietly in the void. Seeing this, the captain of the Golden Crow battleship nodded with satisfaction and turned his attention to the next batch of detectors. Captain Number 746, Zao. Ziggy's faint voice suddenly came from the communication channel. Do you remember what I just said, Professor? Lu needs an advanced detector that is as complete as possible. Are you taking this as fart? Do you know how wasteful it is to fire so many shells, Captain? Number 746's expression froze. I know. Be sure to pay attention next time. The Gray's flagship point. The conductor looked at the scene in front of him with an ugly expression. Another detector was lost. The loss of a detector did not bother it. They have many low quality detectors in their fleet. What makes it feel embarrassed is that the destruction of this detector did not bring any valuable intelligence to civilization. Turn off the active detection device. Let these detectors stay away from each other first. Circle a few times and then find an opportunity to get closer. At the moment this detector was destroyed, the remaining 16 detectors suddenly turned off their active detection devices. They disappeared from the passive detection equipment of the human fleet. Perhaps for other civilizations, this is extremely fatal. Trying to find a few pixel-sized detectors in the vast background of the universe is as difficult as finding a needle in a haystack. But for human civilization, especially for Zero, this difficulty is not too high. Since these detectors were observed by the optical telescope, Zero has been controlling the optical telescope array in the fleet to track and observe these detectors. Therefore, these detectors moved away from the fleet and began to circle, which was clearly visible to LV Yongchang and others. LV Yongchang looked at the star map in front of him with a strange look. The other side is want to confuse us, Fang. Zhu was also confused. It doesn't make sense. What's the point of circling, Tao? Yuda's voice came from a distance. Professor, is there a possibility that the other side thinks that we can't see them after turning off the active radar? LV Yongchang, Fang, Zhu, hiss. LV Yongchang scratched his head in surprise. Not really. It's a level 3 or 4 civilization after all. Can't their optical telescopes do this? Tao. Yuda, who was far away, heard this and his face froze. Professor, what I mean is it possible that the problem lies with Zero? LV Yongchang, drawing the words at that time, appeared in his mind again. Is it really that there is something wrong with Zero? Lu Yongchang looked a little strange and waved his hand to change the subject. Don't worry about it for now. Wait until these detectors get close and shoot them all down for me. Remember to try to leave me one intact one. Chapter 359 Misunderstanding. Inside the command center of Earth Point in the holographic projection, the remaining 16 probes circled a big circle and launched an attack on the human fleet again. The result is predictable. Under the obstruction of the battleships of Jinwu, these probes successfully turned into pieces of space junk. But there was one probe. It luckily avoided the fate of turning into space junk. It was successfully captured. This probe which looks full of technology, stayed quietly in the cabin of Zhuanvai Point with the cooperation of several robots. The communication equipment in the probe was quickly dismantled. Point in Earth, LV Yongchang was concentrating on issuing orders to 0.as40. He controlled the robot to perfectly execute LV Yongchang's orders. The probe was dismantled bit by bit, and the various equipment inside was exposed to everyone. This, LV Yongchang looked at the picture in front of him, and was a little speechless for a while. How could this happen? The internal structure of the probe is not complicated, and it is even a little crude. Point the technological content of most of these devices is not even as good as that of human-made detectors. This technological appearance, this extremely powerful mobility, shouldn't this be an advanced detector made by the other civilization? But why is there such a shabby thing under the bright and beautiful appearance? LV Yongchang sat on the chair with a sullen face and took a deep breath. Point. Although he felt like he was being played by an advanced civilization, he thought about it and his depressed mood suddenly became much better. At least, there are still some things worth learning in this detector power like human civilization. This technological detector also uses Hall propulsion devices and fusion reactors unlike human civilization. Their Hall propulsion devices use a new type of architecture. Point coupled with a more energy efficient fusion reactor. Just these two technologies, human civilization has made a fortune. Point however, this also brought new doubts to LV Yongchang. Could it be that the other party has just entered the third level civilization? Otherwise, he couldn't find the reason why the other party did this. Only fleets that have just entered the third level civilization will use some old facilities as consumables. Lu Yongchang's eyes were full of confusion. Point. After thinking about it for a long time without a solution, he shook his head helplessly. Forget it. Instead of thinking about these things, it is better to prepare for the battle as soon as possible. The flagship of the little grey man. Point alarms sounded one after another. The little grey commander sitting in the first position had already stood up from his chair. It was breathing rapidly, and its pupils trembled slightly as it looked at the big screen in front. What's going on? Why can't the other party find our detector? Aren't they a second level civilization? The commander's slightly sharp voice echoed in the flagship. Point at the same time, its sinister eyes slowly swept over everyone. Point the technicians who were responsible for evaluating the other party's civilization level at the beginning lowered their heads. Every little grey man's face flashed with embarrassment and confusion. Technician number 126, tell me what's going on. Seeing no one answer, the commander couldn't help but feel a little annoyed and called out the name directly. Point the technician whose name was called had a visible hesitation on his face. Point it raised its head helplessly, just in time to meet the commander's cold eyes. Technician number 126 trembled violently. But maybe we made a mistake in our assessment. It considered its words and explained carefully. We got too few data samples, so it's inevitable that there will be mistakes. Then, what level of civilization do you think the other party belongs to? The commander's face became more gloomy. Point the losses caused by the technician's wrong assessment are not important. Point. If the other party belongs to a true fourth level civilization, then their early actions are tantamount to seeking their own death. Technician number 126 did not answer the commander's question immediately. Point. After thinking for a long time, he gritted his teeth and said firmly, level 3, at most, it's level 3. They can't be level 4 civilizations, otherwise we should have been caught long ago. I believe that no civilization can tolerate this level of provocation. The commander did not express his opinion, but just sat quietly in the chair, staring blankly at the large screen in front of him. Point the signal of the last detector also disappeared on the screen. Point for a long time. Point thinking of the current state of the fleet, a ruthless look flashed in the commander's eyes. Except for the detector, all starships go to the target starfield. Our incomplete technological system will be improved. Prepare to enter the curvature navigation state. We go ahead of the other side. 1 month later, human fleet. Point during this month, everyone's nerves were stretched to the extreme point. Even in order to find the enemy 1 second earlier, the human fleet completely gave up hiding and directly turned on the maximum power active detection equipment. Point. But after a whole month of detection, and scanning. No trace of an enemy was found. Even a single detector was not found. Sitting in the command center, LV Yongchang's eyes were filled with fatigue. He habitually raised his head and glanced at the holographic projection in front of him. As usual, the vast space on the star map on one side, the distance between the human fleet and the Gliese 555 star system was a little further away. I really don't know what they are doing. Aren't they just a few detectors destroyed? They were scared away, he muttered to himself, and the doubts and fatigue in his eyes became more and more intense. Fortunately, this month was not a complete failure. After a month of overwork, the next generation of fusion reactors and Hall thrusters have also shown some signs with a stable development environment. The interstellar navigation capabilities of the human fleet will be further improved. By then, the shield technology should also be put on the research and development schedule. Human civilization will also enter the threshold of the third level civilization. Beep. 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 Just as Lu Yongchang's thoughts were gradually dispersing, a harsh alarm accompanied by a flashing warning light pulled his thoughts back. He subconsciously raised his head and looked at the star map in front of him. Dense white bright spots. LV Yongchang's face changed drastically, and he subconsciously held his breath. How could it be? How could there be so many starships? 5 AU away from the human fleet. Countless starships with different styles and broken surfaces slowed down and slowly sailed towards the target. When all the starships arrived at the target location, an order from the flagship appeared in front of all the little greys. Attack. The moment the order appeared, a long flame was sprayed from the tail of each starship. Like pirates, they accelerated madly and rushed towards the human fleet far away at 5 AU. Chapter 360 Mobile Laser Array. A long and persistent siren sounded in every starship of the human fleet. In just 10 minutes, everyone got into their own deep sea cabin. The human fleet, at this moment, has truly entered a state of war. 2 hours later it was beyond Lu Yongchang's expectation. The starships of the opposing civilization did not launch a direct attack. Instead, it relied on its own speed and numerical advantages to wrap up the entire human fleet. Lu Yongchang frowned and looked at the star map in the holographic projection and asked, Ziji, can you break out from one point? Zhao Ziji on the side, a trace of worry flashed in his eyes, shook his head slowly, and responded with a brainwave reading device. The opponent's starship's maneuverability far exceeds ours. I just tried the method of breaking the surface. They don't fight us at all. As long as we move forward, they retreat. In this way, the opponent has been sailing outside our effective range. What about the spread out sprint? Lu Yongchang frowned. According to the active detection information, the opponent does not have many starships left. No. Zhao Ziji directly rejected Lu Yongchang's proposal. Too dangerous. Currently we are surrounded by the other side. Once the defensive formation is divided, our situation will only get worse. Lu Yongchang thought for a moment and realized that this plan was extremely risky. He shook his head helplessly. They surrounded us from a long distance away. I really don't know what they are planning. Are you ready to boil the frog in warm water and let us surrender voluntarily? Seeing Lu Yongchang's sigh, Zhao Ziji couldn't help but be stunned. His breathing quickened a little, and he stretched out his hand to enlarge the holographic projection in front of him. 0. Model the arrangement of the opponent's starships. 0 immediately carried out Zhao Ziji's order. Almost at the same time, models made of bright white light spots appeared in front of him. A quasi-spherical body with an uneven surface and yet to be formed. With just one glance, Zhao Ziji's expression changed drastically. Laser array. They want to burn us to death in a circle with laser arrays. Lu Yongchang was stunned for a moment and then understood what Zhao Ziji meant. He quickly reached out and moved through the air, and a similar holographic model composed of bright white light spots appeared in front of his eyes. Rows and rows of light points are staggered, forming an uneven sphere-like sphere. 0. Do the simulation. Lu Yongchang's face was extremely gloomy. As soon as the words fell, the interior of the sphere suddenly flashed with its dazzling light beam, along with the movement of the opponent's starship. These laser beams also moved. Lu Yongchang shuddered slightly as he looked at the sphere-like net that turned into a laser meat grinder. Attention all units. Prepare giant smoke bombs immediately. The fleet-wide broadcast sent by Ziji appeared on the holographic projection in front. Repeat it again. Prepare giant smoke bombs now. The more the better. Once you are attacked by a laser weapon, throw it away immediately. Just after the broadcast was sent, a dazzling high-energy laser beam was already shining on the Earth. No, not just Earth. Almost every Golden Crow battleship has been attacked by more or less high-energy laser beams. The alarm sounds. Without any pause, Zero quickly activated the emergency plan point under the influence of the vector nozzles. All starships began to slowly spin point the laser beam swept across the surface of the starship's armor, leaving a long trail point. Even so, several Golden Crow battleships that were taken care of by several laser beams at the same time exploded. There was almost no reaction time. The moment the starship began to spin, the opponent's starship also began to move regularly. The long-lasting laser beam suddenly turned into a moving laser fence. The laser fence moves up and down, left and right, or forward and backward. The human starships surrounded by the net seemed to have turned into pieces of meat in a meat grinder, being shot back and forth by laser beams. Armor damage 15%. Bright red words jumped out in front of Yongchang. Smoke bombs. Hurry up and launch the giant smoke bomb. Ziji issued an order. The gun ports on the sides of every Golden Crow battleship suddenly opened. The muzzle of the gun was not aimed at the enemy starship point. Instead, he aimed at his own camp. Bang, bang, bang. Under the power of the nuclear bomb, the yellow dust instantly dispersed and floated aimlessly in the universe. In just 10 seconds, the human fleet disappeared into the thick dust. The power of the laser is greatly reduced, and its lethality to starships is also much smaller. It seemed that the killing effect was not significant enough. After more than 10 seconds, the laser beam array also slowly extinguished. All starships, turn off active detection equipment. Ziji's order continued. Don't stop the smoke bombs. Keep firing. The first, third, and fifth teams break out towards the target location. As he spoke, Ziji waved his fingers in the deep sea liquid and sent information about the breakout location to the first, third, and fifth teams. Teams 2, 4, and 6 break through in the opposite direction. Before we fly out of the smoke bomb range, seize the time and break out quickly. The Grey's flagship, that has not yet appeared. Watching the encirclement network gradually take shape, a cruel smile appeared on the commander's face. There. Finished it. Whispered. This tactic is particularly useful when facing fleets with insufficient mobility. The reason is also very simple. I want to escape, but I can't. If I want to fight, I won't fight you at all. It can be said that, as long as the encirclement network is completely formed, the moment the laser fence appears, the opponent's civilization will be destroyed. It looked at the human fleet that had not yet reacted, and pressed a button on the side with a grin. Turn on laser irradiation. As soon as the words fell, hundreds of red, blue, and purple light beams suddenly appeared in the spherical space. A few scattered explosions appeared on the big screen in front. There was some confusion in the little grey commander's eyes. Is this the only result? It took a quick look. Soon, it discovered Zero's emergency response. The response was pretty quick. Unfortunately, it saw in vain. All starships start moving. It issued the order again. The laser fence was successfully formed. Moving grids rushed towards the starships surrounding the grid. Before it could be happy, or thick yellow smoke appeared in the center of the surrounding net. The next moment, as if a horn was blown, dense smoke flowers bloomed in various areas within the surrounding net. Damn. The Grey man's commander's face darkened. After understanding the other party's civilized intentions, he couldn't help but become furious. Interstellar voyages also carry this kind of equipment. What are they thinking in their heads? Chapter 361 Breakout. The next moment, its doubts were broken by the increasingly sharp and piercing alarm. Without any warning, the enemy ship's signal, which was extremely strong, suddenly disappeared in the thick yellow smoke. Alarm. The enemy ship's signal has disappeared. At the same time, an electronic synthesized voice without any tone fluctuation sounded in the command center. The little grey commander, who had experienced countless battles of all sizes, realized the problem the moment he saw the enemy ship's signal lost. Alert, all starships, retreat at full speed, and expand the encirclement. Launch giant flares. The other side wants to break through. The order was issued. One after another, huge flares were fired from the muzzles of these starships. They dragged a bright and perfect curve in the universe. Finally, a strong light was emitted inside the encirclement. Thanks to the smoke bombs fired by the human fleet, the light emitted by the flares was diffusely reflected countless times in the endless dust, successfully lighting up this starfield. In the extremely dark universe, a group of stardust with a muddy yellow light suddenly appeared. At the same time, the tails of the little grey starships that had stopped firing laser weapons and were flying on the specified orbit also lit up with dazzling light. The ultra-high power Hall thrusters, coupled with the vector nozzles, allow these starships to change course quickly. But no matter how powerful the thrusters are, it takes a lot of time to complete such a large-scale turn and retreat. Will the human fleet give up this perfect opportunity? The answer is obviously no. Just as these starships turned around and prepared to retreat, a fleet with a few burn marks on the armor pierced the muddy yellow smoke. If you look closely, you can find that the burn marks on these starships are slowly fading. Although the fading speed is not very fast, it means one thing: they can perform self-repair to a certain extent. The big screen in front of the command center of the little grey flagship shows this magical scene. Extremely fine yellow dust particles linger around the human starship. The Hall thruster nozzle at the tail of the starship emits an extremely strong light. The combination of the two forms an extremely sharp contrast with the dark background of the universe. The commander of the little grey fleet suddenly held his breath. A hint of disbelief flashed in his eyes. What kind of technology is this? He exclaimed in surprise. But the next moment, it hurriedly pressed the fleet broadcast button beside it. Open the protective shield. Prepare for impact. Human fleet. As the front fleet broke through the muddy yellow smoke, under the illumination of countless flares, the appearance of the enemy fleet was completely presented in front of LV Yongchang. Looking at the picture sent back by the optical telescope array, the doubts and confusion in LV Yongchang's eyes became more and more intense. Suddenly, an incredible guess arose in LV Yongchang's heart. He slightly widened his eyes, and his breathing became rapid. A stream of cool deep sea fluid continued to flow into the lungs along the pulmonary duct, and then continued to be discharged from the body along the pulmonary duct. The large amount of oxygen contained in the deep sea fluid made LV Yongchang's thinking clearer. 0. Count how many starships with different designs are there? He quickly gave an order to 0. The holographic projection in front of him instantly enlarged. Boxes of different colors gradually appeared in the star map. Each box of a color means an enemy ship with a design style. More than 10 seconds later, looking at the colorful spherical encirclement in front of him, LV Yongchang fell silent. Professor, according to the observation of the optical telescope array, 147 starships with different designs have been found so far. Zero's voice came into his ears along the deep sea fluid. Among them, 113 are small starships. LV Yongchang's eyes showed some realization. As expected, Ziji, the other party, is not an alliance organization built by multiple civilizations. LV Yongchang quickly sent a message to Zhao Ziji. Zhao Ziji, who was in the deep sea cabin, was about to issue an attack order when he saw the urgent message from LV Yongchang. He was stunned for a moment, with a hint of doubt in his eyes. Before he could send out the inquiry message, the second message had already appeared in the holographic projection in front of him. They are pirates. No, to be precise, it should be a pirate civilization. Along with this message, there was a statistical report made by 0. Looking at the 147 types of starship design styles in the report, Zhao Ziji felt his scalp tingling. Judging from the known types of starships in front of him, the other party has won at least 147 interstellar wars. Looking back at human civilization. Since leaving the Earth, there has only been one interstellar war. No, that is not even a real interstellar war. After all, the Proxima civilization, like human civilization, is a novice in interstellar warfare. What is this? The first qualifying match, the opponent is a king. Zaozaji swallowed hard, his pupils trembling slightly. The first fleet has arrived at the target area. The other starship has entered our attack range. Two lines of text flashed in the holographic projection in front of him. He quickly came back to his senses. The enemy is currently strong. Thinking about these will only affect the speed of drawing his sword. When we meet on a narrow road, the brave one wins. Even if the opponent is a battle-hardened victorious general, he may not be able to defeat today's human civilization. He gritted his teeth. A trace of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. And gave the order to attack. First, attack. In 5 minutes. Finish the ammunition for me. The third fleet is ready to take over from the first fleet. We must break out of this encirclement. Front point the moment the command comes. The Golden Crow battleship belonging to the first fleet let out its own raw Type 2nd electromagnetic gun and Type 2nd high energy laser cannon take the lead. Secondly, as the main gun of the Comet class Golden Crow battleship, the muzzle of the plasma cannon also began to flash with a faint blue and golden light, as usual. The flashing blue laser beam hit the enemy ship first. To capture the thief, capture the king first. This is an unchanging iron law, whether it is an interstellar war or a ground war. Therefore, those relatively large starships received the focus of high energy laser beams. But everyone has overlooked one thing. The armor material technology of the opponent's starship is higher than that of humans. Not only that, the opponent obviously has its own special response to laser weapon attacks, with the assistance of Zero. These laser beams are precisely irradiated on the corresponding weak areas. The blue laser beam successfully melted a layer of armor on the surface point, but the next moment, a clear burst of white smoke spurted out from the damaged armor, and this white smoke significantly reduces the power of the laser beam. The ablation speed of the opponent's starship armor rapidly decreased. Chapter 362 Passive Laser Defense Technology and Shield Technology. Inside Earth, LV Yongchang looked at the scene with a gloomy face. Zero. Perform spectral analysis on the white smoke. Soon, the analysis results appeared in front of LV Yongchang. Nitrogen, and some fine dust. LV Yongchang looked at the analysis report in the holographic projection thoughtfully. It is similar to the giant smoke bombs of humans. However, this technology of the opponent's fleet is a passive skill. It will only be triggered when it is attacked and the surface armor is damaged. As for its working principle, it is easy to deduce. It is nothing more than using liquid nitrogen to quickly cool the attacked area, and at the same time using haze to weaken the power of laser weapons. LV Yongchang silently recorded this matter in the memo. In the future, this method can be used to upgrade the fleet. At least, at present, compared with interstellar smoke bombs, this passive skill takes effect faster and is relatively more flexible, while the human fleet launched the attack. The opponent was not idle either. Once again, a high-energy laser beam attack was launched against the human fleet. For a time, the huge interstellar battlefield was filled with dangerous high-energy lasers. Unlike the opponent's starships, in addition to maintaining the starship's spin state, the human fleet's means of resisting these lasers also rely on a large number of nanorobots. Adaptive repair technology for starships. In simple terms, the opponent's resistance to laser attacks mainly relies on stacking armor and shields, the main means of resistance for human starships are positioning and breathing to recover blood. Time passed by minute. The Type 2nd electromagnetic cannon and plasma shells fired by the human fleet also successfully crossed a long distance and arrived at the little gray man fleet. An unexpected scene appeared. Neither the electromagnetic cannon projectiles nor the dark blue plasma shells with golden electric light on the surface successfully hit the enemy's medium man. Large starships, when they were about to hit the enemy ship, they exploded. The high temperature plasma generated drew a graceful arc and slid to the side of the enemy ship. A large number of plasmas gushed out, outlining the outline of an ellipsoid around these medium and large enemy ships. As for the messy small enemy ships, they were completely turned into powder under the bombardment of electromagnetic guns and plasma guns. Earth, seeing this scene, LV Yongchang's eyes widened suddenly. Shield technology. 4 words flashed through his mind instantly. Damn it, the other party is indeed a civilization above level 3, Professor. Faced with this weird scene, Zhaoziyi decisively chose to ask LV Yongchang for help. Point of course, this is also the responsibility of LV Yongchang, the technology commander. It should be shield technology. A trace of anxiety flashed across LV Yongchang's face, and he quickly conveyed the message to Zhaoziyi. Let the fleet attack with laser weapons first, don't waste ammunition blindly. Then, he quickly gave orders to 0:0. Play the scene of the enemy starship being attacked in slow motion for me. The reason for doing this is also very simple. He didn't believe that this so-called shield could block these attacks containing a lot of energy indefinitely. The holographic image unfolded and enlarged again. A medium-sized starship was luckily selected as a sample and presented to LV Yongchang. The holographic video slowed down hundreds of times began to play. Under the slow motion, the jumping electric light on the plasma shells appeared particularly clear. Less than 1,000 meters away from the enemy ship, the plasma shells seemed to hit something, and their speed dropped instantly. This instantaneous speed change directly detonated the plasma shells, which were not very stable to begin with. Stop. LV Yongchang's eyes lit up, and he issued an order through the brainwave reading device. Go back a little bit and return the video to the time when the plasma shells just touched the opponent's shield. The holographic image changed rapidly. Right. LV Yongchang looked at the picture in front of him, and a gleam of light flashed in his eyes. It's here. In the picture, in addition to the distorted plasma shells, there are also enemy ships with flashing lights on the hull. 0. Search the entire video and mark all the locations on the enemy ship's surface where dim lights are emitted. 40. This workload is not large. As soon as the voice fell, a model of an enemy ship covered with white bright spots appeared in front of LV Yongchang. LV Yongchang looked at the enemy ship model in front of him thoughtfully and gave another order. Integrate all the attack images. See if these bright lights are related to the power of the attack. The holographic image changed again. A chart slowly emerged. A flash of surprise flashed in LV Yongchang's eyes. Sure enough, as the power of the attack increased, the bright light flashing on the surface of the enemy ship gradually increased. This simple picture means that the so-called shield also has a limit to its endurance. Once subjected to too intensive and powerful attacks, these shield generating devices are bound to have some failures or accidents. LV Yongchang quickly integrated this data and sent it to Zhaoziyi. As a strategic commander, Zhaoziyi slowly closed his eyes. After reading all the data, he took a deep breath of the pale yellow deep sea liquid. His thoughts gradually became clear. He suddenly opened his eyes and used his permission to broadcast to the entire fleet. Attention, all units. Enemy medium and large starships have shield technology. Electromagnetic guns and plasma weapons give priority to attacking small starships. Laser weapons contain medium and large starships. This order was a fatal blow to the small fleet in the Grey Fleet. With just one round of salvos, most of these small starships without shield protection disappeared. It sounds like a great result, but the fact is that most of these small starships that disappeared were products of the first level civilization. But even so, the originally extremely dense encirclement also had a weakness. The disappearance of a large number of small starships made the encirclement on this side appear particularly weak. Seeing that the attack was effective, the morale of the front troops responsible for tearing through the encirclement soared. The breakout battle also entered a white-hot stage at this moment. These Golden Crow battleships, each one of them, was desperate, relying on the starship adaptive repair system and sophisticated movement, and rushed forward against the dense laser beams under Zero's precise control. Lasers accurately bombarded the shield generation devices of medium and large starships. For a moment, the flames and wreckage of the starship explosion filled this small starfield. Among them, there were wreckage of Golden Crow battleships, as well as fragments of enemy small starships. As for the enemy's medium and large starships, no one has crashed yet. Chapter 363. Is this a trick? Inside the Earth. Zhaoziyi, who was in the deep sea cabin, stared at the holographic projection in front of him. In the holographic star map, two different colors of light spots flickered. White light spots represent enemy starships, blue light spots represent human fleets. From this star map, the development of the war can be clearly seen. Under the smoke blocking, silence and breakout tactics of the human fleet, a small gap appeared in the encirclement formed by the white light spots. Although the enemy civilization continued to mobilize troops from neighboring areas, under the saturation attack of the human fleet, those huge number of first-level civilization starships had no chance of survival. The number of white light spots decreased rapidly. Soon, in the star map, there were only dozens of slightly brighter white light spots in the direction of the human fleet's advance. They were the medium and large starships of the enemy civilization. Zhao Ziji looked at the data analysis report from Lu Yongchang with a solemn expression and issued the last order: 1, 3, and 5 fleets, terminate the task of containing medium and large starships. Use plasma weapons to launch a saturation attack on the enemy's medium and large starships. At the same time, use high-energy laser weapons to accurately strike the shield generation device on the surface of the enemy ship. At the same time, a line of Chinese characters jumped out in the holographic projection. The distribution map of the shield generation device has been successfully transmitted. The order had just been issued, and before Zhao Ziji could take a breath, a bright red alarm appeared in front of him. Alarm. Our fleet was attacked by plasma weapons, and the number of warships lost so far. 6. The alarm flashed quickly, and the numbers displayed on it were also refreshed quickly. Our fleet was attacked by plasma weapons, and the number of warships lost so far. 11. Frontline. The battle situation changed rapidly. Before the other side could react, the human fleet launched a saturation attack on those small starships with relatively weak technological levels at lightning speed. Under Zero's control, the hit rate of electromagnetic guns and plasma guns increased by more than several times. So, from the explosion of the first small starship to the completion of clearing the screen, it only took tens of seconds, but as a veteran pirate civilization, the other side also reacted very quickly. The dozens of surviving medium and large warships changed their combat plans at the first time. They no longer used high-energy laser weapons with a lavender glow, but chose more powerful high-temperature plasma weapons. Compared with the plasma weapons mastered by humans, the opponent's plasma shells fly faster, have a shorter energy storage time, and have a longer range, but in any case, their flying speed did not reach the speed of light. This also gave Zero the opportunity to operate. Under Zero's control, each Golden Crow battleship quickly adjusted its course and tried its best to avoid the powerful plasma shells. But, no matter how good the positioning is, it is afraid of the barrage. Even Zero, facing the enemy's crossfire, seemed to be more than willing, but not strong enough. The reason is simple. Zero can indeed calculate every trajectory of the opponent in real time. But the performance of human warships is here. It is impossible to control a tractor to run at the speed of Ferrari. Therefore, after a few seconds of persistence, the human fleet flashed with explosions. Unlike laser weapons, the opponent's plasma weapons can even directly penetrate the armor of human warships. Even the Starship Adaptive Repair System is helpless against this kind of penetrating injury. Inside the little gray man's flagship. The skin on the face of the fleet commander wrinkled into a ball. I don't understand. I really don't understand. According to the latest evaluation results of the evaluators, the opponent should belong to the 3rd level civilization. But the performance on the battlefield falsified this evaluation. Just now, he asked those medium and large starships to try to fire plasma shells at the opponent. Originally, in his expectation, these plasma shells would not cause much damage to the enemy starship. After all, the standard configuration of the 3rd level civilization is shield technology. The shield formed by the magnetic field is enough to block these high temperature plasmas outside the starship. But the fact was not as he expected. The enemy ship's resistance to plasma weapons was close to 0, so it was just a small round of probing, and the plasma shells luckily destroyed several enemy warships. This time, the commander was directly at a loss. According to the intelligence, the other party should belong to the 3rd level civilization. But when it really arrived at the battlefield, it was shocked to find that the other party was a small 2nd level civilization. The little gray commander, who had experienced hundreds of battles, had a thought in his mind at the first time. There is a trick. There is definitely a trick. So it stared at the screen in front of it, trying to find out the intention of the other civilization from the behavior of the enemy starship. At this glance, It saw the problem point. The little grey commander was surprised to find that the enemy warship could quickly predict the trajectory of the shells fired by its own side. That's why a large number of plasma shells they fired fell into the air. This scene once sounded an alarm in its heart point. After all, this bug level ability can play a decisive role in interstellar wars, but soon, it discovered the secret point: the opponent's starship lacked maneuverability. Although it is unclear why the warships of the other civilization only have the combat power of a second level civilization. As a fleet commander, it does not need to figure out the reason point. After careful consideration and confirmation that there is no hidden conspiracy, a gleam of light flashed in its eyes. The broadcast of the entire fleet is turned on again. Warships number 17,413 to 17,437. Attack with all your strength. Since the other party is unwilling to open the shield, take this opportunity to eat up these warships. After a moment of silence, it added again. The rest of the starships remain motionless to prevent fraud. While speaking, it looked at the group of muddy yellow smoke point. The smoke was thick and completely blocked its exploratory eyes, thinking that the other party could easily invade its own communication network. The little grey commander's eyes showed some fear. There must be a fraud. At this moment, it believed in its suspicions. As the order of the little grey commander was issued, the firepower of these dozens of medium and large warships suddenly rose to a new level. Point main guns, secondary guns, almost all gun muzzles were spewing out blue plasma shells. The number of casualties of the human fleet also soared at this moment. Like Zaoziji, Yongchang also saw the number of casualties in the holographic projection point, but he had no waypoint. Unlike laser weapons, humans currently have no defense or treatment methods for plasma weapons. Professor, do we need to use two-dimensional fragments? The holographic projection interface flashed, and Zaoziji sent a question. Chapter 364-0039, S True War Potential. Two-dimensional fragments. LV Yongchang looked at the words in the holographic projection, and a hint of hesitation flashed in his eyes. Indeed, the powerful power of the two-dimensional fragments is enough to turn these third-level civilization starships into a scroll point. However, considering that humans currently only have 50 pieces of two-dimensional fragments, LV Yongchang couldn't help but hesitate. Before mastering dimensional technology, unless you are lucky enough to meet a dying two-dimensional creature who is easy to talk to again. Otherwise, this thing is a non-renewable resource, which is the kind of one less piece. Such a powerful weapon is only used to deal with these warships that are not even secondary flagships. It is really a waste of natural resources. Wait a little longer. LV Yongchang carefully observed the star map and found that except for the starships on the side of the encirclement gap, the other medium and large warships did not make any radical moves. He responded to Zaoziji's inquiry with a solemn expression. The other party's flagship has not yet appeared. The two-dimensional fragments are strategic weapons and cannot be used easily. What's more, the other party's warships have obviously experienced a big battle. Our Golden Crow battleships are not without the power to fight. Just after the message was sent, the front line came with good news. Under the joint siege of 10 Golden Crow battleships, a medium-sized enemy ship crashed. But LV Yongchang looked at the Chinese characters in the holographic projection, clenched his fists, and shouted loudly in his heart, if there is one, there will be two. The Golden Crow battleship can destroy the first medium-sized enemy ship, and it will definitely be able to destroy the next medium-sized enemy ship. This is the first enemy medium-sized battleship to crash on the battlefield. Its crash process can provide a lot of intelligence for humans. 0. Extract the complete destruction record. LV Yongchang's eyes moved slightly, and he quickly issued an order. The holographic image quietly enlarged. The images of 11 battleships slowly appeared, and at point 10 of them are Golden Crow battleships of human civilization. The long interstellar journey caused most of the coating on the surface of the Golden Crow battleship to fall off. Coupled with the baptism of artillery fire not long ago. At this moment, the Golden Crow is full of the breath of war, but compared with the enemy's warships, the Golden Crow Battleships are like brand new ones. The enemy warships without Starship adaptive repair technology have pits and bumps on their surfaces at this moment. Even with various protective measures to protect the shield generation devices, many of them were melted into a ball of iron by high energy lasers. The holographic image began to play. The muzzles of the 10 Golden Crow battleships flashed with a faint blue light, and they all fired plasma cannons at the target point after a round of salvos. The muzzles of the Golden Crow battleships entered the charging state again after a short cooling point, and during this gap, high energy laser beams continued to shoot at the shield generation devices on the surface of the enemy ships. At the same time, these Golden Crow battleships continued to maneuver under Zero's control, avoiding the plasma shells from the enemy ships under accelerated playback. The plasma cannons fired by the battleships quickly arrived in front of the enemy ships and slammed into the magnetic field shield generated by the opponent. For a moment, the plasma shells emitting a faint blue light exploded and outlined the outline of the magnetic field shield point. The scene was extremely gorgeous. Even Yongchang subconsciously held his breath the moment he saw this scene. Very beautiful point, but also very dangerous as the plasma shells exploded. The shield generation device on the surface of the enemy ship's armor instantly emitted a burst of strong light. This burst of light was stronger than the previous observations. Obviously, there was a credit for the laser weapons. The damage to some shield generation devices greatly increased the burden on other shield generation devices. The gorgeous plasma has not dissipated yet, and the second round of salvos arrived again. The third round, the fourth round, until the fifth round of salvos. After a burst of strong light, the shield generator on the surface of the enemy ship completely misfired at the same time. Some plasma bombs fell on the surface of the enemy ship. Swish. The high temperature plasma instantly burned through the enemy ship's scarred armor. The sixth round of salvos. This time, no miracles happened. Under the attack of several groups of plasma with a faint blue light, the scarred warship finally turned into a brilliant firework, briefly illuminating the surrounding starry sky. And only half of the original 10 Golden Crow battleships remained. The holographic image ended. Lines of data slowly appeared in front of Yongchang'0 model and analyzed these data. He gave the order without any hesitation. The attack frequency and attack habits of the enemy ship, the brightness changes of the shield generator, the attack frequency and power of human plasma bombs. All data were integrated into a huge model. With the huge computing power provided by the ternary optical quantum computer, Zero began to analyze the attack mode of the enemy starship bit by bit, and sent the calculation results to the battlefield in real time. At the same time, according to the battlefield feedback, continue to modify this huge model. At this moment, Zero's true war potential was finally fully revealed. The model is constantly improving, and the battlefield situation is also changing rapidly. The crash speed of medium and large warships is getting faster and faster. The number of losses in the human fleet is also beginning to decrease rapidly. The balance of victory began to gradually tilt towards the human fleet. Finally, when the last medium-sized and large warship was destroyed, the human fleet broke out of the encirclement. Looking at the warships that were still motionless in the star map, a trace of doubt flashed in the eyes of Yongchang and Zhao Ziji. Why would the other party let them leave? Could it be a trick? At this moment, as time passed, the originally dense muddy yellow smoke gradually dissipated. The complete appearance of the human fleet, under the illumination of the giant flares, was clearly presented to the enemy civilization. What's going on? In the flagship of the little grey man, the commander's face was full of surprise and confusion. At the beginning, an average of 5 Golden Crow battleships could replace one of their own warships. In the end, the other civilization could basically solve the battle without injury. The progress in this, anyone with a clear eye can see it. As the muddy yellow smoke gradually dissipated, the fleet of the enemy civilization slowly appeared in front of it. When looking at those main fleets that looked exactly the same, the skin on the face of the little grey commander quickly became distorted. Originally, it thought that there was some secret weapon hidden in the muddy yellow smoke. But now, he roared with a ferocious face. Damn it, I was fooled. The other party is not a third level civilization at all. They are just an ordinary second level civilization. Attack all Starships, attack immediately. Flagship, prepare to enter the curvature navigation state. The little grey commander's face was extremely ugly. He swore that these damn bugs would pay the price for this. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 365 Flagship enters. The commander's order immediately made the atmosphere in the flagship solemn. Electronic synthesized sounds rang out in the command center. The gravitational field generators installed at the bow and stern of the flagship also began to operate again. The increasing gravity caused the starlight around the battleship to be distorted to a certain extent. Gradually, a soap bubble appeared around the battleship. This is the key to entering the curvature navigation state. Space curvature bubble. The next second, the huge battleship wrapped in the curvature bubble disappeared from the spot. Earth. LV Yongchang looked at the holographic image in front of him with a puzzled look. It shouldn't be. The speed of the other battleship is far faster than that of human battleships. There is no reason for the other party to let humans leave, like LV Yongchang. Ziji in the deep sea cabin also frowned. He put himself in the perspective of the other commander, trying to find out the reason why the other party did this. But, no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure it out. Why would the other side stop the reinforcement operation and let them break through this thin encirclement? Fortunately, before the two commanders could figure out the reason behind it, the battlefield situation changed again. In the command center, shrill alarms sounded one after another in the star map. The white light spots symbolizing the enemy ships finally moved. After realizing it belatedly, Ziji, who was in the deep sea cabin, breathed a sigh of relief. That's right, this is a normal reaction. But the next moment, his slightly relaxed expression froze again. The reason is very simple. Whether it is the surrounding area or the enemy ships farther away. They decisively gave up the huge encirclement that had been formed and rushed towards the human fleet without any rules at a very high speed. Zuo, what kind of play is this? Is it a Mad Dog wave? While cursing the commander of the other fleet in his heart, Ziji issued one order after another to the human fleet. The Golden Crow battleships that had originally broken away from the defensive formation in order to break out slowed down again and return to the main force. In the previous breakout battle, humans lost a total of 36 Golden Crow battleships as a result. The originally tight defensive formation also had some flaws under Zero's control. Each Golden Crow battleship quickly adjusted its position. The Teoti material storage ship located in the rear also took advantage of this rare free moment to replenish various ammunition and materials for them. Among them, the most important are hundreds of millions of nanorobots in the previous battle. Almost all the nanorobots stored in the Golden Crow battleship were defeated, while the Golden Crow battleship adjusted its own status. The enemy ships in the surrounding area had already arrived at the battlefield first, and the response plan of the human fleet is still so simple and crude. Attention, all units. Release giant smoke bombs. Enter radio silence. Release all small drones. Attack enemy small warships first. After the battle just now, Ziji has already found a way to deal with enemy warships. Those small warships with low performance are the opponent's fatal flaws. As long as these annoying small starships are solved, those medium and large starships can't stand the besiege of the human fleet. Frontline. The moment the order was issued, the belly hatch of each Golden Crow battleship quietly opened. One after another petite drones came out under Zero's control. These drones quickly split into two groups. One of them circled around the Golden Crow battleship. The other one accelerated and headed straight for the enemy starship. Because of their small size, their maneuverability far exceeds that of ordinary warships. Thanks to this, these small drones carrying several plasma bombs can easily avoid high energy lasers and approach the enemy fleet. Then, approach one or two of the starships and explode. As for the drone swarms circling around the Golden Crow battleship, They acted as bodyguards. There was no way the opponent's low-level warships were too many. As the saying goes, ants can kill elephants. Once the two starships come into close combat, the heavy Golden Crow battleship will inevitably be entangled to death by these small starships. At this time, it is time for the drone swarm to play a role. Not only can they block the knife for the main ship, but they can even take the initiative to attack and deal with the enemy warships approaching the main ship. Groups of muddy yellow smoke burst out in the interstellar space. Outside the smoke, there are groups of continuous explosions and flames. There is no doubt that those are the flames of the explosions of the small battleships of the Little Greys. The Little Grey commander on the flagship looked at the screen in front of him with an extremely ugly face. Although their fleet has an absolute advantage in number, the balance of victory has already tilted towards the other side. It racked its brains, but couldn't figure out the reason. It didn't understand. Why did the enemy's warships completely master their action rules in just one breakout battle? Why did the enemy's warships improve so quickly? Yes, as a commander, it has already noticed the reason for their failure. No matter what order it issues, the other party can always make a corresponding prejudgment. This greatly reduces the attack hit rate of its own fleet. At this moment, an extremely distant memory emerged in the commander's mind. I vaguely remember that when he was a child playing games, he also felt this sense of powerlessness. However, at that time, he was facing a weak artificial intelligence. The Little Grey commander shuddered slightly. He quickly shook his head and threw the idea out of his head. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. This kind of technology is absolutely impossible to appear in the hands of a second-level civilization. Not to mention the second-level civilization, even the fourth-level civilization that they successfully attacked not long ago did not master this terrifying technology. Commander, a colleague's voice came from the side. We need to change tactics. The Little Grey commander came back to his senses, looking at the rapidly decreasing small warships on the screen. He nodded solemnly. After calming down, he realized that he had committed a big taboo. Add fuel to the tactics. Looking at the human fleet that continued to break out of the encirclement, it gritted its teeth and asked in a deep voice, "How long will it take us to reach the target, Commander?" "Only 10 minutes. Hearing this, the commander hesitated for a moment and made up his mind. It was not going to waste time with this second-level civilization. The opponent's extremely powerful learning ability made it feel a deep fear, so it launched a fleet broadcast again. All warships, stop attacking. Keep a certain distance from the enemy fleet. Drive them to the target location and prepare for the flagship to enter." Chapter 366 Superluminal Travel. Human fleet. Zayoziji frowned. Professor, the other side seems to have changed its strategy. He sent a message to LV Yongchang through the brainwave reader soon. LV Yongchang's response appeared on the holographic projection in front of him. Not bad. According to the data provided by Zero, the frequency of the other side's attacks has been greatly reduced, and it has also maintained a long distance from our starship. It looks like, it's driving us away. Zayoziji's eyes flashed. That's right, it's driving away, and it's a purposeful driving away. As his mind moved, the holographic projection in front of him quickly enlarged. On the star map, the white light spots have blocked all the retreat routes of the blue light spots, leaving only a smooth road ahead. It seems that the other side has already set up an ambush in front. Ziji, what are you going to do? LV Yongchang sent a message again. Zayoziji frowned and checked the star map. According to the information on the star map, there was nothing unusual in the direction of the fleet's advance. Neither the active detection equipment nor the optical telescope array found any trace of the enemy ship. After pondering for a long time, a ruthless look flashed in his eyes. Take advantage of the enemy's strategy and kill the chicken to scare the monkey. These 8 short words perfectly express his plan. But the risks contained in it are immeasurable. LV Yongchang looked at the 8 Chinese characters in front of him and frowned. He wanted to object, but as a commander in science and technology, he knew that he could not interfere too much with the other party's decision. Therefore, after struggling for a moment, he sent a message to Zayoziji. Can you tell me the reason? Seeing that LV Yongchang did not directly oppose his plan, Zhao Ziji was slightly relieved. He cheered up and quickly conveyed the information to LV Yongchang. First of all, we can simply guess the reason why the other party did this. It's nothing more than a more advanced fleet waiting for us. Among them, there is a great possibility that it is the flagship of the other civilization. Faced with this approach, the safer approach is to change course and fight with the warships in front of us. But no matter what, we will eventually meet the opponent's flagship. If we use the two-dimensional fragments to directly solve the opponent's flagship, LV Yongchang's frown gradually relaxed. After a moment of consideration, he nodded. Just do as you say. The order was issued. The human fleet began to accelerate and rushed towards the only way out. A few minutes later, LV Yongchang stared at the holographic image in front of him. His pupils contracted violently and his breathing became rapid. Zhao Ziji in another deep sea cabin also had a similar expression. The reason is simple. The holographic projection shows a picture from the optical telescope. In the picture, it is a huge starship with a tattered surface. The starship is very large and roughly measured. The length reaches a level of 10,000 meters. Compared with it, even the Earth seems extremely small. But this is not the point. The starship of an advanced civilization cannot make LV Yongchang lose his composure like this. The point is how this starship appeared a few minutes ago. Because he was on guard. LV Yongchang specially called up the real-time picture of the optical telescope and observed the space in front of the human fleet with his naked eyes. The universe is extremely deep. Except for the faint stars in the distance, he did not find any traces of starships for a moment. He even doubted whether he and Zhao Ziji thought too much. Could the other civilization choose to retreat after discovering that the combat effectiveness of their fleet exceeded expectations? This suspicion lasted until 10 seconds ago. 10 seconds ago, in front of LV Yongchang, it was still the endless dark universe. But the next moment, a huge monster suddenly appeared in this vast universe, and it just blocked the direction of the human fleet. The way the starship appeared was extremely strange. It was like it had cancelled its stealth and suddenly appeared in front of humans, and the identity of this 10,000 meter class warship, no need to think too much, it must be the flagship of the other civilization. At the same time, beep, 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 the piercing alarm sounded again in the command center. Alarm, enemy ship radar signal detected. Signal strength, extremely high, current, distance 10 light seconds. As the optical telescope detected the image of the enemy flagship, the active detection device also discovered the enemy's radar signal. A strange phenomenon occurred. Enemy ship radar signal detected. Distance 11.1 light seconds. Error. Enemy ship radar signal detected. Distance 9.99 light seconds. Error. A series of bright red alarms flashed in front of LV Yongchang. LV Yongchang could not help but stand there in a daze. What's going on? He took another look at the holographic image in front of him. The enemy's warship remained in place, without any movement, while emitting extremely powerful full-band detection signals to the surroundings, in order to show its presence to humans in the observation data of the optical telescope. The distance between the human fleet and the enemy ship is shrinking. And the second distance data of 9.99 light seconds is obviously consistent with this observation result. So, what's the matter with the first signal? The other side has only one flagship, and it has not made any movement, but two radar signals with different distances appear before and after. What is this? Suddenly, a terrifying idea emerged in LV Yongchang's mind. 0. Set the opponent's movement speed to superluminal speed and verify again. As LV Yongchang's order was issued, the error prompts that kept refreshing the screen disappeared instantly. Professor, the calculation results show that the movement speed of the opponent's flagship is 1.1 times the speed of light. Although he was prepared in his heart, the moment he saw the result, he still took a deep breath. Deep sea liquid. Superluminal navigation technology. It turned out to be superluminal navigation technology. LV Yongchang's eyes looking at the holographic image suddenly became complicated. Fear and panic, mixed with a little fanaticism and greed. If this warship can be captured, unknown Communication request detected. Signal. Source. 9.98 light seconds ahead. Zeros. Voice interrupted LV Yongchang's thoughts. Do you want to receive it? LV. Yongchang pondered for a moment and nodded vigorously. Receive it. Unknown. Technological civilization. Stop. Hand over 80% of the supplies and all technological data, and you can leave safely. Since the communication information was accompanied by dictionary information, Zero quickly completed the interpretation of the information point the moment the information was interpreted. The enemy fleets following the human fleet also accelerated to the scene and surrounded the human fleet tightly. Chapter 367 Gravitational Lens Effect. Inside the little Gray's flagship point, the fleet commander, who was at the head, looked at the slowing human fleet with a smug look in his eyes. Commander, don't let your guard down. A noisy shout came from a corner of the command hall point. The little Gray's commander's interest was disturbed. His face sank, and he quickly turned his head to look in the direction of the sound point. From their clothes, it can be easily seen that they are technicians of lower status. The fleet commander did not speak, but cast an inquiring gaze at the little Grays next to the technicians. Commander, they are responsible for the strength assessment of the hostile civilization this time. Facing the commander's inquiring gaze, the little Grays answered respectfully. Point. Hearing this, a cold light flashed in the commander's eyes. In his opinion, it was these evaluators who gave wrong information that caused the little Gray's fleet to suffer unnecessary losses. Commander, don't act rashly. The other party, a technician, saw the fleet commander looking at him and said in a hurry. It snorted coldly, interrupted the technician's words directly, and said in an extremely stern tone, open your eyes and take a good look. The other party is a second-level civilization, but the technician who spoke just now quickly glanced at the big screen in front of him. On the big screen, the human fleet has been completely surrounded by the Gray fleet. The only way out is also blocked by their flagship. At this moment, the speed of the human fleet is constantly decreasing. There is no doubt that this second-level civilization fleet has become a turtle in a jar. But what? Hearing the technician's rebuttal, the fleet commander's face sank and shouted sternly, Technician number 1771, pay attention to your attitude. Because of the wrong information provided by your team, the fleet has suffered a lot of unnecessary losses. According to Article 113 of the Supreme Civilization Act, you and your accomplices will be sentenced to death. Do you still want to defend yourself? The technician raised his head with a pale face, looked at the serious fleet commander, and shook his head slowly. I don't want to defend myself, but I still want to remind you of one thing. This time, the commander did not interrupt him, but looked at him silently, signaling him to continue. The technician calmed down and said again, the current performance of the other civilization is indeed a second-level civilization. There is no doubt about that, but don't forget that they can easily invade our computer system. You should have seen their performance on the battlefield just now. Therefore, I suggest, okay. The fleet commander waved his hand with annoyance and interrupted the technician's words. Of course I know what you said, but a second-level civilization is a second-level civilization. Even if it has mastered some amazing computer technology, it is still a second-level civilization. Facing the starships of the fourth-level civilization, they have no choice but to surrender. After speaking, he winked at the little Gray man beside him. The next moment, under the dragging of the little Gray man, these technicians were dragged away from the command center. The command center, which was originally a little noisy, also returned to silence again. The fleet commander glanced at the big screen in front of him impatiently. Is there any movement from the other side? Report. No response information has been received so far. The commander snorted coldly. A level 2 civilization is a level 2 civilization. I guess they don't understand how big the gap is with us. This level 4 civilization warship was just obtained not long ago. Thinking of the shock of its own civilization at that time, it suddenly showed some evil taste in its eyes. Get ready. In 60 seconds, the flagship will enter the curvature navigation state. Show these tiny bugs a little. Let them know what the technology of level 4 civilization is. Inside Earth. LV Yongchang looked at the information in the holographic projection, and his face changed again and again. Sure enough, the other side is an interstellar pirate civilization that makes a living by robbing, and like the pirates on Earth, these star pirates, in addition to robbing various material resources, also have scientific research materials from different civilizations. Professor Zaozij's communication came again. Use the two-dimensional fragments. I don't believe they can withstand the attack of the two-dimensional fragments. This time, LV Yongchang shook his head slowly and rejected Zaozij's proposal. Don't worry. It is very likely that the other party has mastered the technology of superluminal navigation, and the maximum navigation speed and maneuverability are far beyond our warships. The success rate of directly using two-dimensional fragments is too low. Then what should we do now? Zaoziji looked at the increasingly dense encirclement in the holographic projection with some entanglement. The longer the time drags on, the more disadvantageous it will be for us. LV Yongchang took a sip of cool deep sea liquid and sobered up his somewhat heated head. You are right. Therefore, we need a chance to kill with one blow. Only a shocking enough blow can calm these interstellar pirates. As for now, all we have to do is wait. As soon as the voice fell, Zero's voice sounded in the command center. Professor, an abnormal phenomenon has been detected. The holographic projection image changes rapidly. The enemy flagship in front of the human fleet emits extremely strong light from both ends. This is... LV Yongchang stared at the holographic projection in a daze. What is this? Weapon system? No, it shouldn't be a weapon system. What the other party wants should be supplies and scientific research materials. It is not in the interests of the other party to directly use weapons of mass destruction. Just when LV Yongchang was puzzled, Zero's voice sounded again. Professor, the gravitational lens effect has been detected. Hearing this, LV Yongchang's expression changed instantly. Gravitational lens effect. This is a phenomenon that only occurs near massive celestial bodies. The strong gravitational force of massive celestial bodies will cause a certain distortion of space and time. This leads to a magical phenomenon. When light passes through these massive celestial bodies, it will bend to a certain extent. As for the specific manifestation of this phenomenon, it's very simple. When there is a massive celestial body in the straight line between the observer and the light source, the observer will observe one or more images due to the light bending phenomenon caused by the gravitational lens effect, and these images will deviate from their original direction. As Zero's voice fell, more than 10 star maps appeared in the holographic projection in front of him. These star maps are arranged in chronological order. By comparing these more than 10 star maps, Lu Yongchang easily found the problem. The degree of distortion of the starlight around the enemy ship is increasing over time. Chapter 368, Flagship enters. Dimensional strike ship. Combined with various detection data on the side. It's not hard to come to a conclusion. An extremely powerful gravitational force is appearing around the enemy starship. Gravity controlled technology. Lu Yongchang's eyes widened, and he stared at the holographic projection in front of him, trying to analyze its internal principles from its external appearance. Obviously. This is impossible to do. At least for the current Lu Yongchang and human civilization, this is nothing short of a fantasy. Like a primitive man who has just learned to use tools sees a car speeding on a smooth road. No way to start, no way to understand. Zero. Give it a try and use the gravitational lensing phenomenon to inversely model the gravity around the starship. Lu Yongchang quickly gave up visual observation and directly issued orders to Ling. Unlike ordinary tasks, this task requires an extremely large amount of calculation. Even if it is zero, it will take a lot of time. In the star map, or 3D model, is presented bit by bit from scratch. A strangely shaped bubble. Professor, according to real-time observations, the abnormal gravity is mainly concentrated in this area. Lu Yongchang did not speak, but silently stared at the holographic projection in front of him. In the projection, the light on the surface of the enemy ship became increasingly dazzling. Suddenly. It disappears. Lu Yongchang's pupils shrank suddenly. Zero. Why did the enemy ship disappear? Searching. Enemy ship radar signal detected. The enemy ship signal is moving away rapidly. Away. Speed 1.1 times the speed of light. Strings of Chinese characters popped up in front of Lu Yongchang one after another. constantly shocking Lu Yongchang's heart. Thinking of the huge bubble-shaped gravity source that appeared in front of him, or thought flashed in Lu Yongchang's mind. Warp sail. Definitely warp sailing. Only after all, why did the other party choose to leave? Before he could figure out the problem, the enemy ship appeared again in the holographic projection point. It went around and came back. Zero's announcement also sounded belatedly. Alarm. Enemy ship signal approaching. Lu Yongchang looked at the behemoth in front of him, and an incredible thought suddenly came to his mind. Could it be? Is the other party showing off his muscles? A message from the other party's flagship has been detected. Do you want to receive it? Lu Yongchang looked at the holographic image in front of him with a strange expression. After a long silence, he gave the order take over. Unknown technological civilization, I believe you should realize the technological gap between us. Once again, hand over 80% of the reserve supplies and all research materials, including computer technology, and you can leave safely. We will leave you enough fuel and supplies to reach the nearest star system. The Grey Fleet commander looked at the human fleet on the big screen with contempt. Now, the other party should clearly realize the strength gap between the two sides, right? Thinking that it would soon be able to obtain the other party's magical computer technology, a trace of passion suddenly rose in its eyes. If only their fleets could have this kind of assistive technology. It even dares to cause trouble for the entire 4th level civilization. Did the other party respond? It asked nonchalantly. Not yet. The voice of a subordinate reported from the side. No, something is wrong. Command, the formation of the opposing fleet is changing. They are not ready to surrender. The gray man's commander's face darkened. Damn bugs, turn on the gravitational shield and magnetic field shield. Remember, don't attack at will. The other party's computer technology has a great impact on our civilization. Copy that. A little worry flashed in the subordinate's eyes, but he still responded. Unknown technological civilization, we advise you not to challenge our patience. Hand it over immediately. Lines of information continue to appear in the holographic projection in the command center. Ziji took a deep breath of the deep sea liquid and licked his lips subconsciously. A mouthful. Professor, direct attack. Lu Yongchang nodded and sent a message with a sneer. Direct attack. If nothing else, the other party should have discovered Zero's existence. They want to capture us and this is our chance. Wait until the other party relaxes their vigilance, then, Zayozige's eyes flashed with excitement. Received. Finally you can use this big killer. Under Zayozige's order, the formation of the human fleet slowly changed. A wide opening gradually opened in the center of the spherical defensive formation point surrounded by a group of small starships. The Earth was slowly sailing out towards the enemy flagship point. Flagship entry. As for the small starships around the Earth, they have a unique name. Dimension Strike Ship. In this counterattack, Earth fired the first shot. A faint blue laser shot straight towards the enemy flagship in front. Following closely behind are countless electromagnetic cannon projectiles and plasma cannonballs. Lu Yongchang, who was inside the Earth, stared directly at the holographic projection in front of him. Gravitational lensing detected. Zeros. Reminder sounded. At the same time, the straight dark blue laser drew a graceful arc not far from the enemy flagship and bypassed the enemy ship. LV Yongchang's heart sank. Gravitational shield, followed closely by electromagnetic guns and plasma shells. Unsurprisingly, they were all blocked by the magnetic field shield. Although he had expected it in his heart, he still felt a little desperate when he saw this scene. So far, human weapons can't even touch the opponent's flagship. As for the original solution, even if thousands of ships fired at the same time, the shield generation device on the surface of the enemy flagship did not show any ripples. Unknown civilization, don't do useless work anymore. Another message from the enemy appeared in the holographic projection. With this message, the enemy's encirclement began to shrink, and the enemy flagship also slowly advanced under the fire of thousands of Golden Crow battleships. When no one noticed, a tiny dimensional strike ship broke away from the team and rushed forward quickly after rushing out for a distance. The gun barrel in front of the dimensional strike ship slowly opened point under the action of the two-dimensional fragment control device. A small two-dimensional fragment shot out from the gun barrel. The Grey Fleet also noticed this miniature starship that rushed out of the front line at this moment. What is this? The fleet commander frowned and subconsciously asked the technician next to him. No response. It raised its hand and knocked on its head. Remembering that those technicians were ordered to be towed away. Destroy it. It didn't think much and gave the order directly. Chapter 369 Gravity Bomb. Unstoppable. Earth. The two-dimensional fragment was successfully launched. Zero's voice sounded, bringing good news to the human fleet. LV Yongchang exhaled the deep sea fluid in his lungs heavily, and a look of relief appeared in his eyes. The battle plan was successful. Although the two-dimensional fragment has not yet reached its destination, he knows the power of the two-dimensional fragment, and knows that the life of the enemy flagship has entered the countdown at the moment when the two-dimensional fragment is successfully launched. Warning. The piercing alarm sounded again. The enemy radar has locked our dimensional strike ship. As soon as the voice fell, a thick beam of deep purple shot out from the side of the flagship. It is slightly different from the laser weapons equipped by other enemy ships. The laser weapon on the flagship has a diameter of tens of meters. It can be said to be a real laser column. The huge energy contained in it can be seen from its exaggerated caliber. At the same time, the dazzling light at the head and tail of the enemy flagship flashed for a moment. Under LV Yongchang's gaze, the purple laser beam seemed to be unaffected by the surrounding gravitational field and shot straight at the dimensional strike ship that had completed its mission. Boom. Under the attack of such a powerful laser weapon, the dimensional strike ship was like paper and was instantly shot through. Then, a violent explosion of fire lit up in the distance, witnessing the destruction of the dimensional strike ship with his own eyes. LV Yongchang did not have any heartache in his eyes. There are two reasons. First, the launch mission of the dimensional strike ship has been completed, and the dimensional strike ship without two-dimensional fragments is just a slightly more advanced small starship. Perhaps the two-dimensional fragment controlled device in it is still of some value, but in a war of this level, this loss is not worth the heartache. Second, of course, the abnormal situation just now attracted all his attention. According to Zero's simulation, there is a complete gravitational shield around the opponent's flagship. There is no reason why the laser weapons from the enemy ship will not be affected by the gravitational shield. As for temporarily shutting down the gravitational shield, don't joke. The laser weapons of the human fleet have not stopped, but until now, no laser weapon has hit the enemy ship, even when the enemy launched laser weapons. Zero. LV Yongchang asked hurriedly. Why is the high energy laser beam emitted by the enemy not affected by the gravitational shield? What just happened? The human eye can no longer observe the changes in that moment. He urgently needs data from various high precision observation equipment. Professor, a momentary change in gravity was observed. As Zero's voice sounded, the 3D model in the holographic image changed slightly. At the moment when the enemy ship's bow and stern flashed, the gravitational shield that was originally integrated and wrapped around the enemy ship suddenly cracked a gap, and the deep purple laser just passed through the gap in this gravitational shield. Then, the gap quickly closed, and the complete gravitational shield was formed again. The whole process lasted only 1/1000th of a second. LV Yongchang looked at the strings of data in front of him, his eyes showing deep shock and horror. Is this the means of a 4th level civilization being able to manipulate gravity so accurately? Unbelievable. Zero. Where is the two-dimensional fragment? He took a deep breath of deep sea liquid and drew his attention back from the warship in front. The holographic projection that was shrinking to the side quickly enlarged. That was the picture from the optical telescope. A grey picture with an area of only 5 square meters slid towards the enemy ship in front without any sound. Looking at the inconspicuous picture, LV Yongchang couldn't help sweating. I don't know if this two-dimensional fragment can penetrate the gravitational and magnetic field shields of the enemy ship. The target has been successfully destroyed. The electronic sound without fluctuations sounded in the flagship. The little grey commander nodded with satisfaction. See, even with outstanding computer technology, the other party is just a second-level civilization. At best, it's just a bigger ant. A high frequency, piercing alarm interrupted his words. Alarm. The optical detection device detected an unidentified object. Warning. An unidentified object is approaching the flagship. The screen in front of the command center changed rapidly. The image from the optical detection device appeared in front of the little grays. It was a gray picture. Just one glance, and a strong sense of disobedience rose in the mind of the fleet commander. It felt that this thing should not appear in the three-dimensional universe. Dense data was presented on the screen next to it. When the commander saw the string of error codes following the thickness data, his breathing became rapid instantly, although he didn't know what it was and what effect it could cause. But he knew this creation from the enemy civilization would never be a good thing. Destroy it, quick. Looking at the distance on the screen that was shrinking, the commander's voice became sharp and high-pitched. The deep purple high-energy laser beam took the lead. The light at the head and tail of the flagship flashed again, and the complete gravitational shield suddenly cracked a gap to allow the laser beam to pass through. The laser column with a diameter of tens of meters directly swallowed up the small gray picture. A few seconds later, the deep purple laser beam slowly dissipated. Something jaw-dropping happened. There was no damage on the surface of the gray picture. In fact, it still maintained its original route and approached the flagship at a very fast speed. Hiss. The commander took a breath of cold air, and his high-pitched and sharp voice was mixed with a bit of trembling. The picture in front of him made it quickly realize the extraordinariness of this inconspicuous little picture. What on earth is this? Quick, keep attacking. The commander pressed several buttons in front of him in a hurry. We must not let it get close to us. For a while, artillery fire roared, deep purple laser beams, plasma shells flashing with ox. These incomparably powerful ammunition rushed towards the gray picture of only 5 square meters, as if they were free. But it was useless. Amidst the rounds of fierce explosions, the gray picture flew unwaveringly towards the flagship. The gray on the fleet commander gradually faded, and his gray-white body trembled slightly. A hint of cruelty flashed in his eyes, and he gave an order in a stern voice. Launch the gravity bomb. The gravity bomb is the weapon of their civilization. When they captured this 4th level civilization warship, they were lucky enough to find 10 gravity bombs in the warship warehouse. One was consumed when testing the weapon. Now there are only the last 9 left. Chapter 372. Dimensional flagship. The second 2-dimensional fragment. The flagship's belly hatch opened quickly. It was called a bomb, but in fact, its appearance was more like an ancient electromagnetic cannon shell. Under the operation of automated equipment, this gravity bomb was put into a dedicated launcher. After a short acceleration, it was thrown to the gray picture in the distance. The fleet commander clenched his weak fists and looked at the screen in front of him with rapid breathing. The distance between the two quickly approached. But the gravity bomb was detonated. An inexplicable wave came from the inside of the bomb. In just a moment, the gravity bomb with a round surface was compressed into a solid sphere by the strong gravity. The overall volume was reduced by more than 100 times. Even the little gray warships in the distance were more or less affected. Some small warships were forcibly pulled away from their original positions by this sudden strong gravity. Naturally, the human fleet could not avoid this gravity. Under the effect of the gravity bomb, the fleet that had stopped was dragged for hundreds of kilometers. Fortunately, this extremely powerful gravity came and went quickly. It didn't take long for it to decay to zero. This time, it should be okay, right? The commander of the little gray man fleet had a glimmer of hope in his eyes and cast his eyes on the screen in front of him. When he saw the picture clearly, his face suddenly changed. The gray picture was not affected at all, and it was still going its own way and moving along the original track. The commander subconsciously held his breath, and the color of his gray skin quickly became lighter. Not only him, but all the little gray men in the flagship looked the same. Run, run. The fleet commander's trembling and sharp shouts rang out in the command center. Enter curvature navigation immediately. Commander, the gravity generator needs 30 seconds to start. How much time do we have left? The commander's body trembled violently and asked with horror. 10 seconds. The moment the voice fell, the grey picture on the screen quietly passed through two layers of shields. Neither the magnetic field shield nor the gravitational shield could stop its footsteps. It was as if this was just a projection, not an entity. Retreat. Speed. Up the retreat. For a moment, the little grey commander felt his scalp tingling. Who knows what will happen if this thing hits his flagship? Who knows how small second-level civilization can have such a weapon? He didn't have time to think, and directly pressed a few buttons on the console in front of him. The light of the hull thruster increased rapidly. The 10,000 meter long starship began to move slowly. But it was obvious facing the high-speed moving two-dimensional fragments, this behemoth has missed the best time to escape. The gravitational field generator was successfully activated. Curvature. Bubble is being generated. Warning. Level 1 contact warning. The electronic broadcast sound filled the entire command center, and the grey two-dimensional fragment, which symbolizes death, is approaching the flagship of the little grey man fleet firmly and quickly. For a moment, the eyes of all the people in the two civilizations are attracted by this small grey fragment. Under the gaze of everyone, it quietly sank into the interior of the huge flagship. The next moment, a burst of extremely dazzling light is released from the contact point between the two. Like a star, rising slowly in the dark universe, the endless light it emits does not bring a trace of warmth to people, but is filled with endless cold murderous intent. The familiar scene appears again. Yongchang notes that the two-dimensional fragment has successfully hit the enemy warship. He exhaled a mouthful of deep sea liquid with force and sighed silently. It's over. In the picture, sent back by the optical telescope, accompanied by extremely strong light and heat, a thin picture scroll appeared in front of everyone. To be precise, this picture scroll has no concept of thickness. In the picture scroll, every detail of the enemy flagship is clearly presented. If the human astronomical telescope is powerful enough, even the smallest screw inside can be seen. This magical scene did not last long. In just a few seconds, this incomparable strong light quickly extinguished, and the surrounding high temperature also quickly cooled down. Under the erosion of the three-dimensional universe, the two-dimensional flagship regained the third dimension again. But after the two-dimensional flagship, the various materials and structures inside have been completely destroyed. This 10,000 meter long and majestic starship gradually turned into a loose interstellar dust under the gaze of everyone. Professor. The message sent by Zhao Ziji flashed in front of Lu Yongchang. The war is not over yet. I need to launch another two-dimensional fragment. Lu Yongchang instantly understood Zhao Ziji's idea. He nodded and sent a message of agreement. Just as the enemy fleet was stunned in place, the second dimensional strike ship quietly left the place. 1 minute later, the little grey man fleet gradually recovered from this sudden blow. Under the independent control of a captain, the originally tight and orderly encirclement quickly became a loose. Some of the grey warships tried to move forward and attack the human fleet. The other part of the grey warships slowly retreated. Obviously, the sudden death of the flagship was a fatal blow to the morale of the entire fleet. Several secondary flagships with a size of more than 5,000 meters left the original place at this time. With the actions of these secondary flagships, the originally scattered fleet became orderly again. It seems that the commanders in the secondary flagship are taking over the authority of the flagship and organizing the fleet to attack again. Obviously, they believe that this level of attack is not replicable for a secondary civilization. Just when this group of star pirates was about to launch another attack, another extremely strong light appeared in the fleet. After just a few seconds, an extremely beautiful picture scroll was once again presented to everyone. But this time, the picture scroll was a secondary flagship with a length of 5,500 meters, facing the attack of two-dimensional fragments. The secondary flagship obviously suffered the same fate. Scattered interstellar dust was its final fate. The attack of the second 2D fragment completely crushed the little morale of the grey fleet. They could not imagine that a mere level 2 civilization could master such a killer weapon. When they saw the human fleet dispatch the third dimensional strike ship, they could not bear the overwhelming pressure. When the hull thruster at the tail of the secondary flagship lit up, the entire fleet suddenly fell into chaos. For a moment, Countless small starships in the encirclement turned around, activated the hull thrusters, and fled in all directions. Chapter 371 Anti-Robbery. Looking at the scattered enemy fleet in the holographic projection, LV Yongchang was stunned. What's going on? Isn't the morale of the army too loose? He was even ready to launch the third two-dimensional fragment. What happened? The enemy's secondary flagship actually ran away. The decisive battle is coming, and the enemy ship turned around and ran away. Although it seemed a bit outrageous, thinking of the bandits and pirates in the Earth era, everything suddenly made sense. Countless thoughts flashed through LV Yongchang's mind. But in the end, they all merged into a simple command: pursue. We must capture several enemy medium and large warships. The hope of mankind entering the third level civilization lies in them! Exclamation mark. Thinking of the magnetic field shield technology displayed by medium and large starships, LV Yongchang's eyes suddenly burst into a gleam of light. As for Zaozuji, after a moment of surprise, he also reacted. He immediately turned on the fleet-wide broadcast function and issued an order. Everyone, listen to the order. Attack at will. No matter what you do, stop those medium and large starships. The ready-made shield technology is right in front of you. Whether you can get it depends on your ability. Boom. The moment the order was issued, the human fleet was boiling. It can be said that everyone's eyes were red. Shield technology. That's shield technology. In the war just now, almost every captain hated this tortoiseshell shield. There is no way. At present, except for high-energy laser beams and two-dimensional fragments, almost every weapon mastered by humans will be affected by the magnetic field shield. Needless to say, two-dimensional fragments are strategic weapons and cannot be used indiscriminately. And high-energy laser beams. For large starships that are hundreds or thousands of meters long, the power is too weak. In order to win the breakout battle just now, these captains can be said to have used all their tricks. That is why they have an extremely deep understanding of the importance of shield technology. This turtle shell, when placed on an enemy ship, is a headache. But if it is placed on one's own warship, it's a divine weapon. Who wouldn't want to put on a few shields and buffs before a fight? Although there is no buff, the opportunity to put on a shield is right in front of you. So, hit me hard. See those largest warships? All the ammunition, pour it over there. Don't save it for me. This war is over. If I find that there is still a shell, you will go to the gravity cabin for training. None of these secondary flagships can escape. Almost every Golden Crow warship's internal communication channel is filled with similar information. Under the orders of these red-eyed captains, every Golden Crow battleship, like taking stimulants, spit out the ammunition in the warehouse crazily. High-energy laser beams, electromagnetic guns, plasma torpedoes, even some Golden Crow battleships brought out the super large equivalent hydrogen bombs that had been stored for a long time. No matter if it is useful or not, just fire it first. For a while, the small space was filled with all kinds of weapons, and the targets of these weapons were all directed at the largest secondary flagships. The little grey fleet. The number 1 secondary flagship. Are they crazy, eh? Little grey captain suddenly widened his eyes and felt his scalp tingling as he watched the warning information flashing on the screen. When it found that almost all the targets of the attack were several secondary flagships, as a pirate civilization that lived on plunder, it immediately realized the other party's intention to do so. His grey skin suddenly turned grey, his body shook violently, and a strong chill rose from his back. It was so cold. This damn secondary bug actually wanted to counter-plunder them. Seeing that the first round of attacks was about to come, the little grey captain gritted his teeth and shouted, "Stop, no more escape, contact the other secondary flagships. We need cooperation." The other 3 secondary flagships, without exception, were also in the crisis of being besieged. They received the cooperation request from the number 1 secondary flagship as soon as possible. The captain of the number 3 secondary flagship saw the warning information on the full screen without any hesitation and decisively chose to unite. Under the captain's order, the number 3 secondary flagship quickly turned its course while increasing the operating power of the shield generation device, and quickly drove towards the number 1 secondary flagship. As for the number 2 and number 4 secondary flagships, they still maintained the original route point. As for the reason, it's a very simple truth point: when you and your companions are chased by a bear, you don't need to run fast. Just run faster than your companions. Very cruel, but also very realistic point. But these two captains obviously overlooked one thing. Is human civilization really a bear? The sky-high artillery fire engulfed the 4 secondary flagships. The dim starry sky was once again illuminated by this brief and brilliant fire. Before the saturation attack came, the number 1 and number 3 secondary flagships quickly reached a cooperation agreement in order to save time. The two flagships moved towards each other while using laser weapons to intercept the shells fired at each other as much as possible. It must be said that this response strategy is quite good. At least, after dealing with some of each other's shells, their shield generation devices barely withstood this round of saturation attacks. As for the 2nd and 4th secondary flagships, when they chose to escape, their fate was already doomed. The dark blue plasma continued to explode near the 2 secondary flagships, and then slid to both sides under the influence of the magnetic field shield. The continuous saturation attack caused the shield generation device to overload quickly. As 2 strong lights flashed, the magnetic field shields around the 2 secondary flagships slowly dissipated. Groups of dark blue high temperature plasma directly hit the armor of the 2 warships. Boom, boom. 2 extremely brilliant flames appeared in a corner of the battlefield, but the atmosphere in the human fleet was extremely strange. There was not a trace of joy. On the contrary, there was a bit of heartache mixed with regret. EMD. Which bastard placed the plasma bomb? Are you blind? Exclamation mark. Didn't you see that their magnetic field shields were broken? To ships. These are 2 secondary flagships. DNND. Cheer up. If you blow up another one, you will be responsible for it. Faced with the reprimands of the captains, the starship pilots below had bitterness on their faces. It was clearly agreed that all the shells should be fired. Why did they change their minds? Difficult. Too difficult. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 372. Dear advanced technological civilization, we surrender. On the other side. The little grey man number 1 and number 3 secondary flagships, seeing the flames of the explosion of the friendly secondary flagship, the 2 captains' faces were full of horror. It can be foreseen that if there are only 2 secondary flagships in hand, what awaits them will only be the same ending. They tried to give orders to the fleet to unite against the enemy. But the defeat was like a landslide. The destruction of a flagship and 3 secondary flagships completely destroyed the confidence of the entire fleet. Almost no one paid attention to the roar of the 2 captains in the communication channel. Fortunately. After the explosion of number 2 and number 4 secondary flagships, the offensive of the human fleet eased a lot. Even so, this continuous and intensive offensive is not something that ordinary warships can withstand. Even if it is a secondary flagship, it cannot fully accelerate its escape under such an offensive. At this moment, the warships of human civilization were divided into 2 groups. One of them is still carrying out the original fire suppression mission. The other group is speeding towards the 2 secondary flagships. On the way, countless small drones flew out from the belly of the Golden Crow battleship and slowly circled around the huge Golden Crow battleship. These drones and battleships gradually formed a slowly shrinking spherical encirclement. Looking at the increasingly familiar formation, the 2 captains turned pale. Damn bugs. The captain of the number 1 secondary flagship roared angrily. They actually used our tactics. Another captain's bitter voice came from the communication channel. Don't worry about these irrelevant issues. What we need to consider now is how to solve this damn encirclement. When they use the encirclement tactics against other civilizations, they never thought that one day they would fall into the enemy's counter-encirclement. Or, after hesitating for a moment, Captain number 3 hesitated and said again, let's surrender. No, Captain. No 3's proposal was strongly opposed, since, leaving the mother planet, our latter civilization has no history of surrender. Captain number 1 roared in a low voice, they are just a small second level civilization. I will never allow our bug to crawl over our heads and show off its power. But Captain No 3's tone became stronger. The weapons they fired at the flagship. Captain No 1's voice suddenly paused, thinking of that magical and terrifying weapon. It showed a bit of fear in its eyes, but soon it shook its head vigorously. No, it won't. This kind of weapon is definitely not a technology that a second level civilization can possess. Maybe, like us, they got lucky and got these weapons from somewhere. I can be sure that they don't have such powerful weapons now. Captain No 1's tone became more and more certain, and even a little excited. Yes, definitely not. Otherwise, they wouldn't fire 2 weapons at once. Cunning bugs, they want to shock us. The communication channel was silent for a while, and the voice came again. I hope so, but the enemy's encirclement is about to take shape. What else can we do? The captain of the number 1 secondary flagship did not speak, but glanced at the large screen in front. His face was relieved a lot. Thanks to this gradually shrinking encirclement, those warships that had not yet escaped were forced to approach the 2 secondary flagships. Perhaps we should thank this bug, it murmured to itself. Facing the urgent inquiry in the communication channel, it pondered for a moment, and the corners of its mouth rose slightly. What should we do? Didn't the other party tell us a long time ago? But we don't have those giant smoke bombs. Captain number 3 immediately thought of the human fleet's response, but on second thought, its face became ugly again. Look around, Captain number 1 said in a cold tone. Can't these warships act as smoke bombs? Hearing this, Captain number 3 was shocked. Its expression changed several times, and finally it gritted its teeth and said fiercely, okay, time passed slowly. The dense encirclement formed by the Golden Crow battleships and small drones finally took shape. Looking at the enemy ships huddled together inside the encirclement, LV Yongchang's mouth slightly raised, and he took the initiative to send out the first message of human civilization. Surrender or perish. Just 4 words, but brought endless humiliation to the enemy ships in the encirclement. In the number 1 secondary flagship, the captain's grey-white body trembled slightly, and he let out a low roar. It suppressed the anger in its heart, and edited several messages. Latter civilization, never surrender. Damn bugs, you can't fool us. You don't have that kind of magical weapon in your hands anymore. Let's start the war. Let's see whether we tear up your encirclement or we are strangled by your warships. The moment it clicked send, it roared into the fleet communication channel. All warships, prepare to break through. Before the voice fell, the tight encirclement in front suddenly cracked a gap. This sudden abnormal phenomenon made the 2 captains stunned. Soon, their doubts were answered. Because a line of text appeared on the screen in front of them. As you wish. The next moment, a total of 48 small starships sailed into the encirclement along this gap. Although the starships are small, no little grey man dares to despise them. The reason is simple. Their flagship was destroyed by this inconspicuous small starship. The paper-like weapon still makes these little grey men feel terrified. No, impossible. The captain of the number 1 secondary flagship widened his eyes and let out a shrill and sharp wail. Why are there so many? Fake. All fake. I don't believe it. They are just a second level civilization. I don't believe it. It shook its head repeatedly, talking to itself like crazy. Suddenly, it pressed the full fleet broadcast button in front of it with a ferocious face. All warships, launch an attack. The roar echoed in the command center, but there was no response. The next second, a message came from the number 3 secondary flagship. Respected advanced technological civilization, we are willing to surrender. Obviously, this message was not sent to its captain. Captain number 1 looked at the porthole beside him in disbelief. Outside the porthole was the hull of the number 3 secondary flagship. It rushed to the control console frantically and roared. Why, that's fake. That's just an empty shell. Before The voice fell. A dazzling light came from the side point. A large battleship has turned into a picture without thickness. Its lips trembled violently for several times, then it lowered its shoulders and silently sent a message. Respected advanced technological civilization, we surrender. Chapter 373, Highest Control Permission. Earth. Looking at the words displayed in the holographic projection, LV Yongchang showed a faint smile. Success with the two-dimensional fragments given by painting. They successfully fooled a third-level civilization, thinking of the various advanced technologies that humans can obtain from it. LV Yongchang's eyes suddenly became hot. In the star map, the incomplete fleet led by two secondary flagships. The flashing light of the muzzle gradually dimmed. It seems that the other party surrendered sincerely. Even so, LV Yongchang still did not let down his vigilance. He pondered for a moment, edited a message, and publicly sent it to all enemy warships. Open all network ports immediately and hand over control of all warships. The captain of the number 1 secondary flagship looked at the text on the screen and felt a surge of blood rushing to his brain. No, absolutely not. It roared in a very strong tone. Once we release the network port and the control of the warship, our life and death will be completely in the hands of the other party. I don't agree. It is very familiar with this approach of human civilization. In the past, when facing those weak civilizations, the latter civilization usually used various excuses to gain control of the other party's warships, then forcefully shut down the life support system. It can be said to be an excellent way to cut the grass and root without bloodshed. That's why it seems particularly excited and terrified about this request of human civilization. The next moment, the sigh of Captain Number 3 came from the communication channel. Look around us. We have no choice, Captain. Number 1 subconsciously raised his head and looked at the portholes around the command center again. Outside the portholes, there were dense enemy warships. The muzzles of each enemy ship emitted a faint blue light. It knew that this was a sign that the plasma weapon was accumulating energy. None of this is a big deal. What really made it feel cold and its mind go blank were the 48 small starships in front of it. It can be clearly seen through optical observation equipment. Among the 48 small starships, 2 of them have a long gun barrel extending from their heads. The gun barrels are pointing at the number 1 and number 3 secondary flagships. At the same time, perhaps because of the long waiting time, a line of text appeared on the screen in front again. Repeat. Open all network ports immediately and hand over all warship control. Otherwise, die. Just 2 lines of text, but it felt cold all over. But, its lips trembled a few times, and it muttered to itself with despair in its eyes. You also know how we did it before. Give up. After a moment of silence, the voice of Captain Number 3 came again. This time, Captain No 3's voice was particularly low. There is no chance anymore. And there is even worse news. What? Captain Number 1 turned his head blankly and looked at the communication device beside him. It couldn't imagine that in this situation, what news could be called worse news. We don't have the highest permission, Captain. No 3's voice sounded again. Don't forget, these warships were snatched from other civilizations at that time. In order to crack the control permission of the 4th level flagship, those technicians stopped the cracking work of all secondary flagships. What? Exclamation mark. No highest control permission? In the deep sea cabin, LV Yongchang's face was full of astonishment. What a joke. 0. Are you sure there is no problem with the translation? Exclamation mark. The first time he saw the translation, this thought flashed through LV Yongchang's mind. There must be something wrong with the translation. Professor, if the dictionary given by the other party is correct, then the translation will not be wrong. 0 responded to LV Yongchang's doubts with great certainty. Even after getting an extremely positive answer from 0, LV Yongchang was still extremely surprised by this situation. For an interstellar civilization, this situation is simply impossible. What about the network port? LV Yongchang calmed down and asked again. The other party has released all the network ports. 0 responded immediately. That's fine. LV Yongchang breathed a sigh of relief. Next, it's up to you. I need to obtain the highest control permission for all the other party's starships. Received apostrophe 0 still looked calm. Captain number 1 frowned as he looked at the unchanged screen. Then he looked at the scene outside the porthole again. Like the screen, there was no change. Perhaps it was a psychological effect. It even felt that the light from the muzzles of those warships was getting brighter, as if those plasma shells would be fired from the muzzles in the next second and directly hit the warship it was on. It swallowed hard, turned its head sharply, and glared at the technician beside it. "Are you sure the port is open?" "Yes, Captain," the technician said tremblingly. 5 minutes ago, the network ports of all warships were completely unblocked. Then, why is there no response at all?" Captain number 1 waved his hand and interrupted the technician's words directly. "Look at those warships outside. Did you do anything?" Faced with the captain's pressing questions, the technician's forehead suddenly broke out into a few beads of sweat, and his gray skin quickly faded to grayish white. I don't know." The technician's brain turned rapidly, thinking about possible reasons. Suddenly, it seemed to have thought of something, and said excitedly, Maybe the other party's computer technology is relatively backward. Even if we open the port, they can't analyze the battleship's computer system for a while, because the flagship was destroyed too suddenly. Countless important information did not have time to communicate with the secondary flagship. In addition, the technicians themselves are not in a high position, and in the current war, these technicians have very little say. So, an extremely strange phenomenon appeared. Whether it is the captain of the secondary flagship or those low-ranking technicians, no one knew about the quantum communication system intrusion incident that occurred on the flagship not long ago. As for other battleships, that's not to mention. In the eyes of the fleet commander who has become a paper man, these large or small cannon fodder battleships only need to execute his orders perfectly. Hearing the technician's words, Captain number 1 was stunned. Then, a look of sudden enlightenment appeared in his eyes. It felt very reasonable. After all, the other party was only a second-level civilization facing the creation of a third-level civilization. It was normal to be helpless for a short time. Perhaps this would be an opportunity to turn the tables. Captain number 1 frowned slightly and quickly thought about the corresponding countermeasures. Chapter 374, Latter Civilization Disposal Plan. Just as it was about to speak again, the lights in the command center suddenly dimmed. Along with the dimming of the lights, the huge screen in front of the command center also dimmed. No, not just that screen. All the screens in the entire command center dimmed. Even the command centers of the entire fleet had similar images. Captain number 1 stared at the scene in front of him in a daze, swallowing the words that were about to come to his lips. What's going on? In the chaos, it pulled the technician next to it and shouted, "Didn't you say that the other party couldn't analyze our computer system?" The technician ignored the captain in front of him. It stared at the big screen in front of the command center with a dull look. On the screen, lines of strange codes flashed rapidly from an unknown time. "What is this, Captain?" Number 1 asked with a puzzled look on his face. The code on the screen flashed faster and faster. It was like mercury pouring down the ground. Zero arrogantly showed his strength to these little gray men. Finally, the technician's mind could no longer keep up with the speed of code refresh. It reluctantly retracted its gaze. "This is the process of cracking the highest control permission of the warship." Almost all technicians had seen the first half of the code at that time. Captain number 1 quickly caught the hidden meaning in this sentence. "What about the second half?" The technician shook his head and lowered his head. "I don't know. We haven't reached this step yet." Hearing this, Captain No 1's face changed instantly. In just a few dozen seconds, the opponent's cracking progress surpassed them. On these secondary flagships, those technicians spent nearly a year. What this means, I think there is no need to say more. Suddenly, the dim light returned to normal. And the screen flashing countless codes also returned to the familiar appearance of everyone. Did they succeed, Captain? No 1's pupils trembled slightly, swallowed his saliva, and said carefully. The technician shook his head blankly. I don't know, Captain. No one's eyes stayed on the communication equipment beside him. Point without any hesitation. Pointed directly. Press the button on the communication device. Point. There was no response. Pointed. Press the button again unwillingly. Point at the same time. A line of text flashed on the screen in front. Captain of the number 1 secondary flagship, Soviet Wen, stop your behavior. Otherwise, this behavior will be regarded as a provocation to human civilization. It suddenly stopped its actions because of fear, its body trembled violently, and its gray skin almost faded to white. It's over. There was only one thought left in its mind. Point. Their lives were completely in the hands of the other party. The highest control permission has been successfully obtained. Zero's report sounded in the earth. At present, all enemy warships have been controlled. As LV Yongchang walked out of the deep sea cabin, he said in surprise, so fast. His eyes moved slightly, and he asked again, is there any artificial intelligence similar to yours in the enemy's warship? Strong artificial intelligence has not been found yet. Zero responded simply, and clearly without any hesitation, there is a weak artificial intelligence program in the secondary flagship. LV Yongchang nodded thoughtfully. Point. It seems that even the third level civilization has not mastered the so-called strong artificial intelligence technology. Point. Thinking of the mysterious code given by the system at the beginning, the doubts in LV Yongchang's eyes increased again. Point. Where does the technology tree system come from? How many levels of civilization can possess such a powerful zero? LV Yongchang did not delve into these questions that were destined to have no answers, but he directly gave orders. 0. Notify everyone to prepare for the Academy of Sciences meeting. After a moment of silence, he said again, in addition to the Academy of Sciences, wake up the members of the parliament. They also need to attend this meeting. In the meeting room of Earth, LV Yongchang sat in his seat, frowning slightly, as if thinking about something. Yongchang. Ahem. See you again. Ahem. A familiar voice came from the direction of the door. LV Yongchang turned his head and looked in the direction of the voice. Point. Seeing the visitor, he quickly untied the electromagnetic absorption device on the chair, stood up and greeted Chairman Hong. Long time no see, Hong. Kaiming coughed, walked quickly to LV Yongchang, and reached out and patted his shoulder. Yongchang, why are you calling so strange? Perhaps because he saw an old acquaintance. LV Yongchang's expression also became much more lively. Point. He chuckled and changed the subject. Did you just come out of the hibernation chamber? Hong. Kaiming coughed hard again and nodded. That's right. The taste of this deep sea fluid is really. As he said that, he shook his head inexplicably and said half jokingly, when you have time, you can improve its taste. LV Yongchang naturally smiled and agreed to this request. Okay, I will solve this problem when everything is stable. Hearing this, Han Kaiming smiled bitterly and shook his head. Stable and stable. I don't know if I can see this day. When I woke up, I thought I had arrived at the Gliese 555 star system, but Han Kaiming smiled bitterly. Another war. Fortunately, the result is good. When I just woke up, Zero told me that you captured a batch of warships from the third level civilization. You don't know. I was completely stunned at the time. Looking at Han Kaiming's astonished expression, Lu Yongchang showed a gentle smile on his face. This is also thanks to the two-dimensional fragments of painting. Otherwise, the flagship that can travel at superluminal speed alone would be enough for us to drink a pot. Han Kaiming, superluminal travel. Seeing some of the surrounding parliamentarians cast doubtful eyes at him, he hurriedly lowered his voice. Is there such a thing? Lu Yongchang nodded and explained softly. Unbelievable. Han Kaiming's eyes showed some fear. Professor, speaker, all the participants are here. Zero interrupted Han Kaiming's words. Hearing this, Han Kaiming nodded gently, straightened his expression, and sat in his seat. Point. In a short moment, he seemed to have changed into a different person, compared to the laughing and joking appearance when chatting with LV Yongchang. Han Kaiming at this moment exuded a calm and solemn aura from head to toe. In his impression, the old speaker also had the same temperament. Point. Thinking of the old speaker buried in Proxima B, LV Yongchang couldn't help but reveal a bit of trance in his eyes. Professor Fang Zhu's voice came from the side. Point. LV Yongchang calmed down and spoke slowly. Everyone, This meeting mainly discusses one issue, holographic projection unfolded. Latter. Civilization Disposal Plan Chapter 375 Subordinate Civilization. I believe you all have a certain understanding of this incident. LV. Yongchang didn't say much nonsense and went straight to the point. In your opinion, how should we deal with those surrendered rattle people? The moment the question was raised, a burst of discussion suddenly sounded in the conference room. Almost everyone showed hesitation and entanglement on their faces. That's normal. Unlike the Proxima battle, in order to save time and prevent future troubles, there were no prisoners of war after the war. Humans adopted a genocide plan. Therefore, this kind of cross-civilization prisoner treatment is also the first time in human history. Looking at the tangled and hesitant expressions on everyone's faces, LV Yongchang didn't show any impatience on his face. He just sat quietly in his seat. His eyes slowly swept over the people around him. Obviously, the gaze of the chief scientist is not so easy to bear, whether it is the academicians of the Academy of Sciences or the members of the Parliament. Most people subconsciously lowered their heads and avoided their sight when they came into contact with LV Yongchang's eyes. On the one hand, it is because in the past few hundred years, as a person who has led the entire human civilization out of the earth and into the universe with his own strength, LV Yongchang's status in everyone's heart has been deified. On the other hand, it is also because this meeting is a hot potato. Although it is to discuss the treatment plan for the latter prisoners of war, in fact, the core of this meeting is related to the future attitude of mankind towards alien civilizations' contact and handling with alien civilizations has always been an extremely sensitive issue. Once handled improperly, it is easy to cause extremely bad effects. So, not only the parliamentarians, but even the academicians of the Academy of Sciences, no one dared to express their opinions first for a while. Only some old timers not only dared to look at LV Yongchang, but even dared to make a few macro expressions expressing helplessness and confusion. Yes. It was Fang Zhu. Looking at Fang Zhu's extremely coherent movements of shrugging, shaking his head, and spreading his hands, LV Yongchang was also a little helpless. Ahem, Fang Zhu, how about you tell me your opinion first? The meeting must continue after all. Since no one was willing to be the first leader to express their opinions, he could only pick a strong man from among them. Facing LV Yongchang's name, Fang Zhu performed a Beijing opera face, changing in a short moment. From the initial helplessness of shrugging his shoulders, shaking his head, and spreading his hands, to the astonishment of being named, and finally, when he found that the world was focusing on him, the astonishment quickly dissipated, replaced by incomparable solemnity and solemnity. Ahem, Fang Zhu coughed lightly, cleared his throat and said, I think the way to deal with the prisoners of war in latter can refer to the Proxima civilization. The moment the voice fell, a noisy discussion suddenly sounded in the conference room. The meaning of Fang Zhu's words was very clear. Genocide plan. Leave no one alive. Such a radical solution instantly attracted countless debates among them. The reaction of the parliamentarians was particularly intense. Unlike those frightened parliamentarians, LV Yongchang did not show any strange expression on his face. To be honest, what Fang Zhu said was actually his inner answer. As for Councillor Han Kaiming, he remained silent like Lu Yongchang, without showing any expression on his face. Those who are not of my race must have different hearts. I believe everyone knows this. Seeing that the discussion had subsided a little, Fang Zhu spoke again. Humanity has not come into contact with many civilizations, but we can still see the laws of survival in this universe. Survival of the fittest. Kindness to foreign races will sooner or later become a knife stabbing at humanity itself. Speaking of this, Fang Zhu stopped talking and turned to look at Lu Yongchang on the side. Professor, this is my point of view. LV Yongchang nodded without comment, glanced at everyone again, and asked softly, are there any different opinions? I object. A congressman sitting in the corner suddenly said, it's different from the Proxima civilization. At that time, it was understandable to take genocide to continue human civilization, but now, human civilization does not have such an urgent need. The current level of technology is enough to support us to randomly select star systems with abundant resources within 20 light years, as he said. The congressman glanced at Liu Yongchang cautiously, seeing that LV Yongchang did not show any objection. He calmed down and spoke again. In my opinion, there are several advantages to keeping these latter people. On the one hand, we can deeply understand the survival rules of interstellar civilization through these latter people. We cannot look at this universe based on the one-sided words of painting. On the other hand, dialogue and exchanges between different civilizations can greatly promote the development of our culture and technology. We can even gain some experience and lessons from their social system. What's more, treating prisoners of war well is a principle that humans have always followed. I believe you all know the truth behind it. To some extent, we can transform them into subordinate civilizations of humans. I believe that in possible future wars, these subordinate civilizations can greatly reduce the casualties of human soldiers. LV Yongchang's expression moved slightly. He didn't care about the first two opinions of the congressman, but the last opinion, it must be said, touched his heart. Every interstellar war is accompanied by the death of a large number of soldiers and generals. Once there are subordinate civilizations participating in the war, he can completely push these subordinate civilizations onto the battlefield and act as the so-called cannon fodder. This can greatly reduce the casualties of the human fleet. In fact, the advantages of subordinate civilizations are not limited to war. When there is no interstellar war, these subordinate civilizations can continuously transfuse blood for the mother civilization. This so-called blood is a variety of resources. Undoubtedly, this can greatly accelerate the development of the mother civilization. No, just as Liu Yongchang was thinking about the various advantages of subordinate civilizations, a loud shout came from the side. Subsidiary civilizations will not work. He raised his head and looked in the direction of the voice. It was Zhao Ziji. The military, as part of the Academy of Sciences, is naturally qualified to participate in this meeting. As the commander-in-chief of the human fleet's tactics, Zhao Ziji is one of the representatives of the military. Perhaps he noticed Liu Yongchang's gaze. Zhao Ziji turned his head and cast an inquiring look at Liu Yongchang. Liu Yongchang nodded gently and gave him an encouraging look. Zhao Ziji, tell me what you think. Why do you oppose the proposal of affiliated civilization? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.